moment Evan Brooks pushed open the wrong door on the 47th floor, he didn't just walk into a billionaire's private sanctuary. He walked into a trap that would either destroy them both or save lives neither of them knew were in danger. What looked like a janitor's careless mistake was actually the first move in a calculated attack, and the woman he accidentally saw vulnerable and exposed would soon become the only person standing between him and disgrace. But before any of that, there was just silence, shock, and the terrible realization that some doors, once opened, change everything. If you're ready to discover how one wrong turn became the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted, stay with me until the end. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The fluorescent bulb in Evan Brooks's maintenance cart flickered as he pushed it down the corridor of the 47th floor, the wheels squeaking rhythmically against polished marble that probably cost more per square foot than his monthly rent. He'd been working in the Meridian Tower for 3 years, and in that time he'd learned the building's rhythms the way a sailor learns the sea, which executives left early on Fridays, which departments ordered too much coffee, which bathrooms had the temperamental plumbing that required his particular touch. Today's work order was routine: replace air filters in the executive suite's private conference rooms. The kind of job that took maybe an hour if you didn't rush, paid the same whether you finished early or late, and required nothing more than showing up with the right equipment and the right access card. Evan preferred routine. Routine meant predictability, and predictability meant he could pick up Lily from after-school care by 5:30, help her with homework over mac and cheese, and still have time to read her 2 chapters of whatever book currently held her 7-year-old imagination captive before bedtime. Routine meant stability, and stability was everything when you were raising a daughter alone. The access card reader beeped green, and Evan shouldered open the maintenance door that led to the executive wing's inner corridor. The carpet here was different, deeper, quieter, the kind that swallowed sound instead of echoing it back. Abstract art hung on walls painted in muted grays and whites. Everything about this space whispered money in a way that made Evan acutely aware of the grease stain on his work shirt and the scuff marks on his steel-toed boots. He checked the work order on his phone. Conference room 4703A. Should be the 3rd door on the left. He'd been up here before, though not frequently. The executive floors had their own dedicated maintenance staff for most issues, and guys like Evan only got called up when those teams were stretched thin or the job was too mundane for their attention. The 3rd door on the left was unmarked except for a small brass plate reading "Private." That tracked. Evan swiped his card, waited for the beep, and pushed the door open. Except it wasn't conference room 4703A. Time seemed to crystallize into individual frames, each one searing itself into Evan's memory with painful clarity. The room was enormous, not a conference room at all, but some kind of private office or lounge. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the afternoon sun streaming through to illuminate hardwood floors, a massive desk, built-in bookshelves, and a woman standing near a tall mirror, frozen in the act of buttoning a silk blouse. She was maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a way that had probably been severe and controlled before she'd started changing clothes. Her eyes, sharp, intelligent, commanding, met his with an expression that cycled through surprise, confusion, and something else. Not quite fear, not quite anger. Something harder to name. For a single terrible moment, neither of them moved. Evan's brain screamed at him to back out, apologize, close the door, disappear. But his body had locked up, caught between professional instinct and social catastrophe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. He started, his voice coming out strangled. Wrong room. I'm sorry. Don't move. The woman's voice was steady, authoritative, completely unlike what Evan would have expected from someone caught mid-change. She pulled the blouse closed, her fingers moving quickly to fasten the remaining buttons, her eyes never leaving his face. I said don't move, she repeated, reaching for something on her desk. A phone. Keep your hands where I can see them. Evan's hands came up automatically, palms out, the universal gesture of I'm not a threat. His maintenance cart was still half in the hallway, the door propped open by his shoulder. Ma'am, I swear, this is a mistake. I have a work order for 4703A. I must have miscounted the doors. Security, the woman said into her phone, her tone clipped and cold. Presidential suite. Unauthorized entry, now. Presidential suite. The phrase hit Evan like cold water. He'd heard about it. The top executive's private space, accessible only by private elevator and requiring special clearance that maintenance definitely didn't have. Which meant he wasn't just in the wrong room, he was in the wrongest possible room in the entire building. "Please," Evan said, trying to keep his voice calm despite the panic rising in his chest. "I can show you the work order. I'm supposed to be replacing air filters in the conference rooms. I work here. My name is Evan Brooks, employee ID 47219. You can check. This is just a mistake." The woman's expression didn't change. She'd finished buttoning her blouse and now stood with perfect posture, one hand still holding the phone, the other resting on the desk's edge. Despite the circumstances, she looked completely in control. Evan recognized that quality, the kind of self-possession that came from never doubting your right to give orders and expecting those orders to be followed. "What's in the cart?" she asked. "Air filters, tools, cleaning supplies, standard maintenance equipment." "Show me," slowly. Evan moved carefully, hyper-aware of how this must look. A middle-aged man in work clothes, caught in a space he shouldn't be, facing a woman who'd been vulnerable moments ago. Every true crime documentary he'd ever half-watched while folding laundry suddenly felt relevant. Every news story about men who claimed innocence while evidence suggested otherwise. He pulled out an air filter, still in its plastic wrapping, then a screwdriver, a small ladder, a spray bottle of cleaner. Basic equipment. Nothing threatening. Nothing that suggested anything other than exactly what he'd said. A maintenance worker doing a routine job. The woman watched with those sharp eyes, missing nothing. Evan caught himself wondering who she was. The presidential suite meant CEO, probably. He'd seen company newsletters with photos of the executive team, but he'd never paid much attention. Names and faces of people so far above his pay grade, they might as well be fictional characters. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, heavy, fast, purposeful. Security. Evan's stomach twisted. This was about to get so much worse. 3 security officers appeared in the doorway, hands on their belts, bodies positioned in ways that suggested tactical training. The lead officer, a tall black man with gray at his temples, took in the scene quickly. Evan with his hand still partially raised, the woman standing composed near her desk, the maintenance cart half blocking the entrance. "Ms. Cross," the officer said, addressing the woman. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, Marcus." Her voice had softened slightly, though not by much. "This man claims to be maintenance, says he walked in by mistake." Marcus's eyes shifted to Evan, assessing. "ID." Evan slowly reached for the laminated card clipped to his belt, holding it out. Marcus took it, examined it, then spoke into his radio. "Run employee 47219. Brooks, Evan. Facilities." The response crackled back after a moment. "Confirmed. Level 2 maintenance. Current shift active. No flags." Some of the tension in the room shifted, though it didn't disappear. Marcus handed the ID back to Evan. "You have a work order?" "On my phone." Evan pulled it out carefully, opened the app, and showed the screen. "Conference room 4703A. Air filter replacement. Got the notification this morning." Marcus studied the screen, then looked back at Ms. Cross. "This is 2 doors down from 4703A. The doors up here aren't numbered on the outside." "They should be," Ms. Cross said quietly. Something in her voice had changed. The hardness was still there, but underneath it, Evan heard something else. Confusion. Maybe concern. "Ms. Cross," Marcus said carefully. "With respect, this area requires special clearance. Level 2 maintenance shouldn't have card access to this corridor at all." The room fell silent. Evan watched understanding dawn across faces as the implications sank in. His card had opened that door. A door it shouldn't have been able to open. "Check the system," Ms. Cross said, her voice sharp again. "Now." One of the other officers pulled out a tablet, fingers moving quickly across the screen. 30 seconds passed, then a minute. The officer's frown deepened. "Ms. Cross," he said slowly, "according to the access log, this door has been unlocked for the last 40 minutes. "That's impossible," Ms. Cross said. "I locked it myself when I came in to change after the board meeting." The officer turned the tablet around, showing the screen. System shows manual override at 2:47 p.m. That's your code, ma'am. Ms. Cross moved to look at the screen, her composure finally cracking into visible confusion. I didn't override anything. I've been in video meetings since 3 o'clock. Check the conference system logs if you don't believe me. Marcus and the officer exchanged glances. Professional, trained glances that suggested they were thinking the same thing Evan was starting to think. Something was very wrong here. Mr. Brooks, Marcus said, his tone shifting from suspicious to businesslike. Did you notice anything unusual when you entered this corridor? Anyone else around? Any equipment that seemed out of place? Evan thought back, replaying the last 10 minutes in his mind. No, just me. The hallway was empty. Everything looked normal. And your work order, Marcus continued. When did you receive it? This morning, around 9 a.m., I think. I had 3 other jobs before this one. The officer with the tablet was typing again, his frown deepening with each keystroke. The work order was generated at 8:47 this morning from an admin terminal in the facilities office. But, he paused, scrolling through something. That terminal was logged in under credentials that were reported compromised last week. It was supposed to have suspended the account. But they didn't, Ms. Cross said flatly. Apparently not. The pieces were there, scattered across the room like parts of a puzzle, but Evan couldn't quite see how they fit together. Someone had used compromised credentials to generate a fake work order. Someone had overridden the lock on this door using Ms. Cross's own code. Someone had arranged for Evan to walk into this room at exactly the moment when Ms. Cross would be most vulnerable. But why? Ms. Cross, Marcus said quietly, we need to sweep this entire suite for surveillance devices, and we need to pull security footage for this floor going back at least a week. Ms. Cross nodded, but her eyes were on Evan now, studying him with an intensity that made him want to look away. He didn't, though. He met her gaze steadily, trying to project the truth that he was exactly what he appeared to be, a single father with a maintenance job who'd stumbled into something far beyond his understanding or control. Mr. Brooks, she said finally, I owe you an apology. It appears you were manipulated into this situation. It's okay, Evan said automatically, though it wasn't okay. Not really. His hands were still shaking slightly, adrenaline draining out of his system in a way that left him feeling hollow. I understand why you reacted the way you did. Do you? There was something in her voice now, something darker than the professional concern of a CEO dealing with a security breach. Do you understand what it means to have your privacy violated? Your safety compromised? To have someone arrange for you to be caught in a vulnerable moment by a stranger, not knowing if that stranger means you harm? Evan thought of Lily, of all the times he'd triple-checked the locks on their apartment door, of the pepper spray he kept on his keychain, and the self-defense class he'd taken at the community center, because the world was full of threats he couldn't always see coming. He thought of being a single parent, responsible for a child's safety in a city that didn't care about either of them, of the constant low-level anxiety that came with knowing you were all that stood between your daughter and chaos. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I do. Ms. Cross studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Marcus, please escort Mr. Brooks back to his normal work area. Make sure he has an incident report to fill out, and arrange for him to speak with HR about compensation for this disruption to his day. Wait, Evan said. Compensation? I don't need... You were set up as a pawn in someone's game, Ms. Cross interrupted. The least this company can do is ensure you're not penalized for it. Consider it an apology. She turned away then, dismissing him, her attention already shifting to the officers and the larger problem unfolding around them. Evan found himself being ushered out into the hallway by Marcus, his maintenance cart rattling as it rolled over the threshold back into the mundane world of regular corridors and regular problems. For what it's worth, Marcus said as they walked toward the elevator, you handled that well. Stayed calm, didn't escalate. That matters. I was terrified, Evan admitted. Smart, but you didn't let the terror make you stupid. Marcus pressed the elevator button. That's the difference between someone who survives bad situations and someone who makes them worse. The elevator arrived, and Evan pushed his cart inside. As the doors started to close, Marcus held them open with one hand. "Mr. Brooks," he said seriously, "if anyone approaches you about what happened today, and I mean anyone, press, lawyers, people claiming to be from corporate, you come directly to me. Here's my card. My personal cell is on the back." Evan took the card, his confusion deepening. "Why would anyone, just in case," Marcus said. "Ms. Cross has a complicated situation, high profile. Lots of people interested in her business, both legitimate and otherwise. What happened today, someone with skill set it up. That means it's not over." The doors closed before Evan could respond, leaving him alone in the descending elevator with nothing but his thoughts, and the uncomfortable feeling that he'd just stepped into something far more dangerous than a wrong room. 3 hours later, Evan sat in his pickup truck in the after-school care parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process the afternoon. He'd filled out an incident report that felt both excessive and inadequate. How do you capture the surreal experience of accidentally walking in on a billionaire CEO, getting accused of intrusion, then learning you'd been set up as part of some larger scheme? HR had been apologetic, professional, and had insisted on cutting him a check for 3 days of wages as inconvenience compensation. They'd also made him sign an NDA so comprehensive it made his head spin. He could tell his daughter he'd had an incident at work. He could not tell her, or anyone else, any specific details about what had happened, who was involved, or what he'd seen. Lily emerged from the building in a swirl of pink backpack and untied shoelaces, her teacher trailing behind with that particular smile adults used when they were about to tell you something about your child that you probably didn't want to hear. "Mr. Brooks," Mrs. Chen said warmly, "could I have a quick word?" Evan's stomach sank. "Is everything okay?" "Oh yes. I just wanted to let you know that Lily was very helpful today during art class. One of the other students was struggling with cutting paper, and Lily showed her a technique for holding scissors that made it much easier. Very patient, very kind." The relief that washed over Evan was disproportionate to the news, but after the afternoon he'd had, hearing something good about his daughter felt like a lifeline to normalcy. "That's great," he said, smiling genuinely for the first time since walking through the wrong door. "Thank you for telling me." Lily bounded up, already talking. "Dad, guess what? We learned about butterflies today, and did you know some butterflies migrate thousands of miles? Thousands! That's like going from here to somewhere really far." "That's amazing, sweetheart." Evan took her backpack, helped her into the truck, buckled her in. The familiar ritual grounded him, reminded him what actually mattered. As he drove home, Lily chattered about butterflies and art class, and how Tommy had brought crickets for show and tell, and they'd escaped and the whole class had spent 20 minutes trying to catch them. Normal, beautiful, uncomplicated kid stuff. The kind of life he'd worked so hard to build for her after her mother had walked out 3 years ago, leaving nothing but a note and a forwarding address that turned out to be fake. Their apartment was in a building that had seen better days but maintained enough respectability to feel safe. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that worked if you didn't expect miracles, and a living room that served as homework space, play area, and Evan's office rolled into one. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. While Lily did homework at the coffee table, Evan stood in the kitchen making mac and cheese from a box, his mind wandering back to Ms. Cross's face when she'd realized the door had been deliberately unlocked. The fear underneath the control. The anger at the violation. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, Evan ignored unknown numbers. They were either spam or bill collectors, neither of which he had the energy to deal with. But after Marcus's warning, he answered. "Mr. Brooks?" A woman's voice, professional but not cold. "This is Jennifer Santos from Meridian Tower Corporate Security. I'm calling to inform you that you've been placed on temporary administrative leave with pay while we investigate today's incident." Evan's stomach dropped. "Administrative leave? I didn't do anything wrong." "This is purely procedural," Santos assured him quickly. "You're not under any suspicion. However, given the nature of what occurred, we need to conduct a thorough investigation, and that includes interviewing all parties involved separately. You'll still receive your full wages, and we expect this to be resolved within a week at most." A week? Evan thought about the rent due in 10 days, the careful budget that didn't include unexpected gaps in income, even paid ones. "Mr. Brooks, I want to be very clear about something. This is not a punishment. This is us taking your situation seriously. Someone used you to attempt something we're still trying to understand. That means you could potentially be at risk. At risk of what? There was a pause. We're not certain yet. But until we are, we'd prefer you not be in the building where today's incident occurred. If you need anything, if anyone contacts you, if anything unusual happens, you call me immediately. Do you understand? Evan understood. He understood that his normal life had just been knocked sideways by forces he couldn't control. He understood that somewhere in that tower, people were playing games with stakes he couldn't begin to calculate. And he understood that somehow he'd become a piece on that board. I understand, he said. After he hung up, Lily looked up from her math worksheet. Dad? Is something wrong? Evan forced a smile. No, sweetheart, just work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. You look worried, though. I'm fine. He brought her the mac and cheese, sat down beside her. How about after dinner we read 3 chapters tonight instead of 2? Her face lit up. Really? Really? Because whatever was happening in that tower, whatever complex web he'd stumbled into, this was real. This was what mattered. His daughter, safe and happy, eating mac and cheese and learning about migrating butterflies. But later that night, after Lily was asleep and the apartment was quiet except for the ambient sounds of the city outside, Evan stood at the window and thought about Ms. Cross's eyes when she'd looked at him. Not the initial fear and anger, but later, when she'd realized he was just a pawn. There had been something in that look. Recognition, maybe. An understanding that sometimes the world forced you into situations you never asked for, and all you could do was try to handle them with whatever dignity you could muster. Evan pulled out Marcus's card, looked at the number written on the back in neat handwriting. He didn't call. Not yet. But he kept the card in his wallet, right behind the photo of Lily from her first day of 2nd grade. Just in case. Because something about today felt like a beginning, not an ending. And beginnings, in Evan's experience, meant everything was about to change. Vivian Cross sat alone in her office long after security had finished their sweep, staring at the spot where Evan Brooks had stood with his hands up and fear in his eyes. The security team had found nothing. No cameras, no microphones, no physical evidence of anything beyond what they already knew. Someone had accessed her system, used her codes, and arranged for a maintenance worker to walk in at precisely the wrong moment. But why? If the goal was to embarrass her, there would have been photographs, video, something to leak or blackmail her with. If the goal was to harm her, the maintenance worker could have been someone dangerous, armed, intending violence. Instead, they'd sent her Evan Brooks. A man with a clean background check, 3 years of unremarkable employment, and a 7-year-old daughter he picked up from after-school care every day at the same time. A man who'd looked more terrified than threatening, whose first instinct had been to apologize rather than exploit. A man who was exactly what he appeared to be, an innocent pawn in someone else's game. Marcus knocked on her open door. Miss Cross, you should go home. It's past 9. Someone had access to my private codes, Marcus. They walked right through my security like it wasn't even there. I know. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. And we're going to find out who. But not tonight. Tonight, you need rest. Vivian wanted to argue. She wanted to pull every security log, every access record, every piece of data until she found the hole in her defenses. But Marcus was right. Exhaustion pulled at her, made her thoughts sluggish when she needed them sharp. The maintenance worker, she said. Brooks. Make sure he's protected. If someone was willing to set him up once, they might try again. Already done. Temporary leave with pay, full security protocol. Jennifer's handling it personally. Good. Vivian stood, gathering her things. And Marcus? This wasn't random. Someone's probing for weaknesses, which means they're planning something bigger. I know, Marcus said quietly, and we'll be ready. But as Vivian rode the private elevator down to the parking garage where her driver waited, she couldn't shake the feeling that ready wasn't enough. Someone had gotten into her sanctuary, violated her space, used an innocent man as a tool, and they'd done it perfectly. Which meant whoever they were very good at what they did. Vivian thought of Evan Brooks's face, the genuine confusion and fear. The way he'd kept his hands visible, moved slowly, tried so hard to prove he wasn't a threat. The way he'd looked at her, at the end, was something like understanding. She pulled out her phone, sent a text to her assistant. Pull complete background on Evan Brooks. Not just employment. Everything. Family, finances, history. I want to know who he is. Because pawns didn't stay pawns forever. And something told her that before this was over, she and Evan Brooks were going to meet again. The background report arrived on Vivian's desk at 6:47 the next morning, delivered by her assistant with the kind of discretion that came from 10 years of managing sensitive information. Vivian had barely slept, her mind circling the same questions over and over, and she'd arrived at the office before sunrise to find answers waiting for her. Evan Michael Brooks. Age 34, born in Pittsburgh, raised by a single mother who'd worked 2 jobs to put him through community college. Associate degree in mechanical engineering, but never completed his bachelor's, dropped out in his junior year when his mother got sick. Worked construction for 3 years while caring for her until she passed. Married at 28 to Rachel Summers, divorced at 31. 1 daughter, Lily Ann Brooks, age 7. Full custody, no visitation from the mother, who'd relocated to parts unknown shortly after the divorce was finalized. Employment history showed a pattern. Steady work, nothing glamorous, always choosing stability over advancement. He'd been at Meridian Tower for 3 years, never called in sick, never complained, never caused problems. His supervisor's evaluations were consistent, competent, reliable, keeps to himself. Financial records painted a picture Vivian recognized all too well from her own childhood. Someone managing carefully, balancing on that thin edge between making it and falling behind. Rent paid on time, but never early. Modest savings account. No credit card debt, but no cushion either. The kind of life where a single unexpected expense could trigger a cascade of problems. Nothing in the report suggested anything other than what Evan had claimed. A regular person living a regular life, doing his best to raise his daughter alone, which meant he really had been nothing more than a pawn. Vivian closed the file and stared out at the city waking up below her window. Somewhere out there, Evan Brooks was probably making his daughter breakfast, completely unaware that his background had been dissected by corporate investigators. The thought left a bitter taste in her mouth. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. "We've got something," he said without preamble. "Conference room in 5 minutes." The security team had set up in one of the smaller conference rooms, the kind without windows, where sensitive information could be discussed without worrying about long-range surveillance. 3 officers clustered around a laptop, and Marcus stood at the head of the table, his expression grim. "Show her," he said. The officer at the laptop pulled up security footage, timestamp showing 3 days before the incident. The hallway outside Vivian's suite, empty and quiet. Then a figure appeared, moving with purpose but not haste. Male, medium height, wearing maintenance coveralls and a baseball cap pulled low. He stopped at Vivian's door, pulled out what looked like a tablet, and worked for maybe 2 minutes before the door clicked open. "He's cloning the access codes," Marcus said. "See how he's got the device pressed against the reader? He's pulling the encryption key and uploading new credentials." "How is that possible?" Vivian demanded. "Those readers are supposed to be tamper-proof." "They are. Against conventional methods." Marcus nodded to the officer, who pulled up another window showing lines of code. "But this wasn't conventional. Whoever this is, they had access to the manufacturer's proprietary software. The kind of access you can't just buy on the dark web." Vivian felt cold certainty settle in her chest. Inside job. Or someone with connections to our security contractor. Either way, this was planned. Carefully. The footage continued. The figure entered Vivian's suite, stayed for exactly 4 minutes, then exited. The door locked behind him. Nothing appeared disturbed. If they hadn't been specifically looking for this intrusion, they never would have known it happened. "What was he doing in there for 4 minutes?" Vivian asked. "That's what worries me." Marcus pulled up another set of images, these from inside the suite. "We swept for physical devices and found nothing, but 4 minutes is enough time to install something we wouldn't recognize as a threat. A passive RFID scanner, a laser microphone component. Hell, with the right equipment, he could have mapped your entire network topology just by proximity to your devices." "You're saying they've been listening?" "I'm saying they might have been. We've gone through every inch of that suite with electromagnetic scanners and found nothing active. But that doesn't mean there's nothing there, just nothing we can detect with current technology. Vivian forced herself to breathe slowly, to think past the violation and focus on the strategic implications. What about the man in the footage? Can we identify him? We're working on it. The cap and coveralls are generic, available at any work supply store. His gait suggests some training, military or law enforcement, the way he moves efficiently without looking rushed. But his face never comes into clear view. He knew where the cameras were and how to avoid them. Professional. Very. Vivian studied the frozen image on the screen, this figure who'd walked into her private space and done God knows what. What about the work order that sent Brooks to my suite? Where does that thread lead? The officer at the laptop pulled up another document. The compromised credentials used to generate the work order belonged to Karen Hu, facilities admin. Her account was flagged after suspicious activity last week. Multiple login attempts from an IP address that traced back to a coffee shop downtown. We suspended access, or thought we did. Turns out the suspension never propagated through the system due to a database synchronization error. Convenient error, Vivian said. Very. We're investigating whether it was genuinely a technical failure or whether someone deliberately prevented the sync. Marcus leaned forward. Ms. Cross, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there anyone, personal or professional, who might have a specific reason to target you right now? Business rival, disgruntled former employee, anyone with a grudge? Vivian almost laughed. Marcus, I run a multinational corporation. I've made hundreds of decisions that benefited some people and hurt others. The list of people who might have grievances is extensive. Anyone who stands out? She thought about the hostile takeover bid she'd blocked 3 months ago, the executive she'd fired for falsifying reports, the competitor whose market share she'd been systematically eroding for the past year. Business was war, and she'd been fighting on multiple fronts for so long she barely remembered what peace felt like. No one specific, she said finally, but I'll make a list, cross-reference it with people who'd have the resources and connections to pull off something this sophisticated. There's one more thing. Marcus nodded to the officer who pulled up a different video. This is from yesterday, about an hour after the incident with Brooks. Loading dock, east entrance. The footage showed the same figure from before, same coveralls, same cap, climbing into a nondescript white van. But before he closed the door, he looked directly at the camera and smiled. Just for a second. Then he was gone. The certainty in Vivian's chest turned to ice. He wanted us to find this, all of it. The door breach, the work order, that footage. He's showing us how easily he can get in. Which means the incident with Brooks wasn't the objective, Marcus said quietly. It was a demonstration. A demonstration of what? How vulnerable you are. The words hung in the air like a threat. Vivian had spent her entire adult life building walls around herself. Financial security, corporate power, layers of protection that should have made her untouchable. And someone had walked through all of it like those walls were made of paper. I want 24/7 security, she said, her voice hard. Not just here, my home, my car, anywhere I go regularly. And I want our entire digital infrastructure audited by outside experts, someone we know isn't compromised. Already in motion, Marcus assured her. But, Ms. Cross, there's something else we need to discuss. Brooks. What about him? He's a loose end. Whoever orchestrated this used him to get close to you, even if only for a moment. That makes him a potential liability to them. If they think he saw something, heard something, knows something, he's in danger. Marcus nodded. We've got him on administrative leave, but that only protects him while he's not working. Once he's back to his normal routine, he's exposed, and we have no legal authority to provide him personal protection. Vivian thought of the background report, the picture of a man just trying to get by, raising his daughter alone. The kind of person who became collateral damage in games played by people with resources and ruthlessness he couldn't begin to comprehend. Keep monitoring him, she said, quietly. If anything unusual happens around him, I want to know immediately. And if he's approached, if whoever's behind this tries to use him again, then we'll deal with it. Vivian stood, signaling the meeting was over, But I'm not going to let an innocent man become a casualty because someone decided to use him to get to me. She left the conference room with Marcus trailing behind, her mind already shifting to the dozen other crises that required her attention today. Board meetings, strategic planning sessions, the endless demands of running a corporation that employed thousands of people and generated billions in revenue. The machinery of her life that never stopped, never paused for things like fear or uncertainty. But as she stepped into her private elevator, she caught her reflection in the polished steel doors and saw what she usually kept carefully hidden: the exhaustion, the strain, the cracks in the armor she presented to the world. Someone had violated her sanctuary. Someone had made her feel vulnerable in the one place she should have been safe. And whoever they were, they'd made a critical mistake. They'd assumed she'd be frightened enough to make errors, panicked enough to expose weaknesses. They didn't understand that Vivian Cross had learned a long time ago that fear was just another tool, and vulnerability was just another form of intelligence gathering. The elevator opened onto the executive floor, and Vivian stepped out into her domain, shoulders back, expression controlled. Let them come. She'd be ready. Evan spent his unexpected week off trying to establish a new routine that didn't feel like his life had been knocked off its axis. He took Lily to school, came home to an apartment that felt too empty during work hours, and tried to convince himself that everything was fine. It wasn't fine. On the third day of his administrative leave, a package arrived. No return address, just his name written in neat block letters on brown paper wrapping. Evan stared at it for a long moment before opening it, Marcus's warning echoing in his head about people who might contact him. Inside was a burner phone. Just that. No note, no explanation, nothing to indicate who'd sent it or why. Evan's hand shook slightly as he held it. This was wrong. This was evidence of something, though he couldn't say what. He should call Marcus, report this, let the professionals handle it. The phone rang. Evan nearly dropped it. His heart hammered as he stared at the screen showing an unknown number. Every instinct screamed at him not to answer, to throw the phone away, to pretend it had never arrived. He answered. Mr. Brooks. The voice was male, calm, almost friendly. I apologize for the dramatic delivery, but I needed a way to contact you that wouldn't be monitored by Meridian's security team. Who is this? Someone who wants to help you understand what you've stumbled into. I didn't stumble into anything. I walked into the wrong room because someone set me up. Very perceptive. Yes, you were set up, but do you know why? Evan's mind raced. To get to Ms. Cross, to violate her privacy or threaten her somehow. Partially correct, but you're missing the larger picture. The voice remained pleasant, almost conversational. Tell me, Mr. Brooks, what do you know about Vivian Cross's background? Nothing. I don't know anything about her. Exactly, and that's by design. She spent considerable resources ensuring her past stays buried. But some of us remember. Some of us were there. There where? That's not a conversation for the phone. I'd like to meet with you. Somewhere public, somewhere safe. I'll explain everything. Why you were chosen, what's really happening at Meridian Tower, and how you can protect yourself and your daughter from becoming collateral damage. The mention of Lily sent ice through Evan's veins. Don't you dare! I'm not threatening her, Mr. Brooks. I'm trying to warn you that others might. You've been pulled into a situation involving very powerful people with very complicated histories. The best thing you can do is understand what's really happening so you can make informed decisions about how to proceed. I could just hang up, call security, tell them about this. You could. And they'd take the phone, investigate, find nothing that leads anywhere. Meanwhile, you'd still be in the dark, still vulnerable. Or you could meet with me, listen to what I have to say, and then decide for yourself what to believe. Evan's mind was spinning. Everything about this felt wrong, dangerous, like a trap closing around him. But the voice on the phone was right about one thing. He was in the dark. Someone had used him, and he had no idea why or what might happen next. Where? He asked finally. Lincoln Park, the big fountain near the south entrance. Tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. Bring the phone, leave yours at home. Come alone. How do I know this isn't... The line went dead. Evan stood in his kitchen, holding a burner phone that shouldn't exist, having just agreed to a meeting that every rational instinct told him was a terrible idea. He should call Marcus. He should report this immediately. Instead, he carefully hid the phone in a drawer under some old takeout menus and tried to figure out what he was going to do. That night, after Lily was asleep, Evan sat at his laptop and did something he probably shouldn't have. He researched Vivian Cross. The official biography was impressive. MBA from Harvard, multiple successful startups, appointed CEO of Meridian Corporation 5 years ago at the unusually young age of 35. She'd stabilized a struggling company and turned it into a major player in the tech sector. Under her leadership, Meridian had acquired 3 competitors and expanded into international markets. But the personal information was sparse. No mention of family, no photos from before her professional career began. No college friends interviewed for puff pieces. No childhood home featured in lifestyle magazines. It was as if Vivian Cross had simply appeared fully formed at age 22, already brilliant and driven and complete. Evan dug deeper, searching for anything that might explain the gap. What he found were forum posts, conspiracy theories, and unsubstantiated rumors, the kind of internet noise that accumulated around any successful public figure. Most of it was garbage, but some of it mentioned a sealed juvenile record, an incident when she was 16 that had never been made public. He was about to close the laptop when he found one more thing. A newspaper article from 18 years ago, barely 2 paragraphs long, about a house fire in a small town outside Boston. 2 casualties, identities withheld pending family notification. The address meant nothing to Evan, but something about the date nagged at him. He cross-referenced it with Vivian's biography. The fire had occurred exactly 3 weeks before she'd graduated high school and left for college. Maybe it was nothing, maybe it was coincidence, or maybe the voice on the phone was right, and there was a whole history he didn't know about. Evan closed the laptop and stared at the dark screen, seeing his own reflection distorted in the black surface. A regular guy, in over his head, trying to decide whether to walk into what might be a trap, because not knowing felt more dangerous than knowing. He thought about Lily, sleeping peacefully in her room, trusting him to keep her safe. Everything he did, every decision he made, it all came back to that. Protecting her, giving her a stable life, making sure nothing touched her that could cause harm. But if he was already tangled up in something dangerous, wouldn't it be better to understand what that something was? The next day crawled by. Evan took Lily to school, came home, and watched the clock like it was counting down to something inevitable. At 1:30, he left his phone on the kitchen counter, tucked the burner into his jacket pocket, and drove to Lincoln Park. The fountain was exactly where the voice had said, water cascading down 3 tiers of sculpted stone, surrounded by benches and walking paths. Evan found a bench with a clear view of the area and sat down, trying to look casual despite the anxiety crawling under his skin. At 2:03, a woman sat down beside him. Not a man, as he'd expected, but a woman in her 50s with gray hair cut short and sharp eyes that cataloged everything about him in a single glance. "Mr. Brooks," she said, her voice matching the one from the phone. "Thank you for coming. You're not what I expected. People rarely are." She settled back against the bench, her posture relaxed despite the tension radiating from Evan. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I used to work with Vivian Cross back when she was just starting out, before she became the person the world knows now. What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I want to give you information. What you do with it is your choice." She pulled out a tablet, called up a document. "This is a police report from 18 years ago. A domestic violence incident involving a 16-year-old girl and her stepfather. The girl fought back, sent the stepfather to the hospital with serious injuries. The charges were eventually dropped, record sealed due to her age and the circumstances." She turned the tablet toward Evan. The report was heavily redacted, but he could make out enough details to paint a picture. A girl defending herself against someone who'd hurt her repeatedly. A system that had failed to protect her until she'd been forced to protect herself. "The girl's name was Vivian Mercer," Dr. Chen continued. "She changed it legally when she turned 18, started over, built a whole new life on top of the old one." Evan looked at the report, then back at Dr. Chen. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because 3 weeks after that incident, there was a fire. The stepfather and the girl's mother died. The fire was ruled accidental, faulty wiring, but the investigation was cursory at best. The girl had already left town for college. She was never considered a suspect. The pieces were there, but Evan couldn't quite make himself assemble them. "You're saying, Ms. Cross..." "I'm saying there are questions that were never answered. And I'm saying that the person who broke into her suite, who set you up to walk in on her, might know about those questions." "This is insane." Evan stood up, his heart racing. "Why are you dragging me into this? I'm nobody. I fix air conditioning units and replace light bulbs. I don't know anything about corporate espionage or buried secrets or whatever this is." "You were chosen specifically because you're nobody," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Someone expendable, someone who could be manipulated easily, someone whose word would never carry weight against a billionaire CEO's denial. But now you know what I know. Now you're not quite so expendable anymore." "Is that supposed to be reassuring?" "It's supposed to be honest." She stood as well, faced him directly. "I don't know who's targeting Vivian Cross or what they plan to do with the information they're gathering, but I know she's dangerous when threatened, and I know that people who get caught between her and her enemies tend to get hurt. So what am I supposed to do?" "Stay away from her. Don't go back to work at Meridian Tower. Take your daughter and find employment somewhere else, somewhere far away from whatever's about to happen." Dr. Chen handed him the tablet. "Keep this. Consider it insurance. If things go wrong, if you need leverage or protection, that report might be valuable. Just remember, using it makes you part of this story, not just a bystander." She walked away before Evan could respond, disappearing into the crowd of people enjoying the park on a pleasant afternoon. Evan stood holding the tablet, feeling like he'd just been handed a grenade with the pin already pulled. He should throw it away. Delete the file, destroy the device, pretend this conversation never happened. Instead, he tucked it into his jacket and walked back to his truck, his mind churning through possibilities he didn't want to consider. That evening, as he helped Lily with her spelling homework, his personal phone rang. Marcus. "Mr. Brooks, I need you to be very careful about something. We've detected unusual activity around your apartment building. Someone's been conducting surveillance." Evan's blood ran cold. "What kind of surveillance?" "Nothing overt, but our monitors picked up a vehicle that's been parked on your street for the past 3 days. Different plates each day, but same make and model. Classic counter-surveillance technique." "You're watching me?" "We're monitoring for threats. There's a difference." Marcus paused. "Has anyone contacted you, approached you in person or by phone?" Evan thought about the burner phone in his drawer, the meeting in the park, Dr. Chen's warnings. He should tell Marcus everything. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. "No," he said. "No one's contacted me." The lie felt like stepping off a cliff. "If anyone does, you call me immediately. These people, whoever they are, they're professionals, they're dangerous, and you're a loose end they might decide to tie up." After he hung up, Evan sat very still, listening to Lily practice her spelling words in the next room. Her voice bright and confident, completely unaware that her father had just lied to corporate security, was holding evidence of potential crimes committed by a billionaire, and had possibly put them both in danger. He thought about running, packing up tonight, taking Lily, driving until they were far away from all of this. But running meant giving up their life here. Lily's school, her friends, the stability he'd fought so hard to give her. Running meant admitting he couldn't handle this, couldn't protect her without fleeing. The tablet sat in his jacket pocket like a weight. Insurance, Dr. Chen had called it. Or maybe just evidence of how thoroughly he'd been pulled into something he didn't understand. Evan made a decision then, one that would alter everything that came after. He wasn't going to run, and he wasn't going to hide. But he also wasn't going to be anyone's pawn. If he was caught in the middle of this, then he needed to understand all sides of it. Not just what Dr. Chen told him, not just what Meridian Security revealed, but the whole truth. And there was only one person who could give him that. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to the number on Marcus's card. "I need to speak with Ms. Cross. In person. Alone. It's important." The response came 30 seconds later. "Tomorrow, 8 p.m. I'll send you the address." Evan deleted the message thread, put his phone away, and went to help his daughter with her homework, trying to pretend that he hadn't just done something that could either save them or destroy them. In her office 47 floors above the city, Vivian read Marcus's forwarded message and felt something shift in her chest. Evan Brooks wanted to meet. alone. Which meant he knew something, or someone had gotten to him. Either way, tomorrow night would provide answers, and Vivian Cross had always been very good at getting answers when she needed them. The address Marcus sent led Evan to a building he'd never noticed before, tucked between two larger structures in a part of downtown that felt both expensive and deliberately anonymous. No corporate logos, no directory in the lobby, just a security guard who checked his ID against a list and directed him to the 8th floor without a word. Evan had arranged for Mrs. Patterson next door to watch Lily, telling her he had a meeting about his job situation. Not quite a lie, but not quite the truth either. The whole drive over, he'd questioned whether he was making a catastrophic mistake. Meeting alone with someone who might have secrets dark enough to kill for seemed like the kind of decision that ended badly in every thriller he'd ever watched. But he'd also spent the past 24 hours thinking about Dr. Chen's warnings, about the surveillance Marcus had detected, about how thoroughly he'd been used as a pawn in a game he didn't understand. If he was going to protect Lily, he needed to know what he was protecting her from, and that meant confronting the person at the center of all this chaos. The elevator opened directly into a small reception area, elegant and minimalist. Vivian Cross stood near the windows, her silhouette backlit by the city lights spread out below. She turned as he entered, and Evan was struck again by the control in her bearing, the way she seemed to command space just by occupying it. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you'd agree to meet." "You asked. That was either very brave or very foolish, and I wanted to determine which." She gestured to a pair of leather chairs arranged near the window. "Please, sit." Evan remained standing. He'd been in enough uncomfortable situations to know that accepting an invitation to sit meant accepting the other person's control of the conversation. "I'll stand, thanks." A flicker of something crossed her face. Approval, maybe, or recognition that he wasn't going to be as easy to manage as she might have expected. "Fair enough," she said. "Then let's not waste time on pleasantries. You wanted to speak with me. I assume it's because someone has contacted you with information they thought you should have." The directness caught Evan off guard, but he recovered quickly. "How did you know?" "Because that's what I would do if I wanted to destabilize someone in my position. Find a person tangentially connected to me, give them carefully selected information designed to create doubt and fear, and let human nature do the rest." Vivian moved closer, her eyes sharp and assessing. "What did they tell you?" Evan thought about the tablet hidden in his truck, the police report with its redacted details and unanswered questions. He thought about Dr. Chen's voice, calm and certain, painting a picture of violence and possible murder wrapped in the past of the woman standing before him. "They told me you have secrets," he said finally. "That your past isn't what you've presented to the world. That someone knows those secrets and is using them to target you. And they positioned you as what? A concerned citizen? A potential ally? Or did they suggest you were in danger because of your accidental involvement?" "All of the above." Vivian smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Efficient. Tell me, did they give you any actual proof, or just implications and suggestions designed to make you paranoid?" "They gave me enough to know there are questions you've avoided answering for a long time." "Questions." She turned back to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "Everyone has questions they don't want to answer, Mr. Brooks. The difference is most people don't have the resources or determination to keep those questions buried. I do. Or at least, I did." "So it's true. You're hiding something." "I'm protecting something. There's a difference." She faced him again, and for the first time since he'd met her, Evan saw something other than perfect control in her expression. Something raw and real and painful. "I was 16 years old when my stepfather broke 3 of my ribs and fractured my cheekbone because I came home late from studying at the library. I was 16 when I fought back hard enough to put him in the hospital, and I was 16 when I decided that I would never, ever be that powerless again." The words hung between them, stark and honest. Evan felt his certainty wavering, the narrative Dr. Chen had constructed suddenly seeming less clear. "The fire," he said. 3 weeks later, your mother and stepfather died." "They did. In a house fire caused by faulty wiring that had been reported to the landlord 3 times and ignored 3 times. I was already at college when it happened. I came back for the funeral, packed up what little I wanted to keep, and left. I never went back. Dr. Chen suggested that I killed them. Vivian's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. That I arranged the fire as revenge or to silence witnesses to what I'd done. That I'm a murderer who's been hiding behind corporate power and careful image management for 18 years. Are you? The question came out harder than Evan intended, but he didn't take it back. If he was going to be caught up in this, he deserved the truth, not a carefully crafted version designed to manipulate him. Vivian studied him for a long moment, and Evan had the uncomfortable feeling of being evaluated in ways he couldn't fully understand. Finally, she pulled out her phone, scrolled through something, and held it out to him. "That's the complete police and fire investigation report," she said, unredacted, including the parts that were sealed when I was a minor. "Read it. See for yourself what actually happened." Evan took the phone, scanned through pages of official documentation. The domestic violence incident was there, exactly as Dr. Chen had described, but the fire investigation was more thorough than she'd implied. Multiple expert analyses, extensive evidence collection, interviews with neighbors and electrical contractors. The conclusion was unanimous: accidental fire caused by deteriorated wiring in walls that hadn't been updated in 40 years. No signs of accelerant, no indication of tampering, no evidence suggesting anything other than a tragic accident waiting to happen. The investigators' notes even mentioned that the house had been flagged by the fire marshal 2 months before the incident as a potential hazard. The fire marshal's report, Evan said slowly, it recommended the building be condemned. It did. The landlord ignored it. My mother and stepfather died because someone prioritized profit over safety. Vivian took the phone back. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I was covering up anything. They died because the world is full of people who make careless decisions that cost other people their lives. Evan felt the ground shifting under his assumptions. Then why are you being targeted now? If there's nothing to hide, why go through all this effort to expose you? Because the truth doesn't matter as much as the story people can tell with carefully selected pieces of truth. Vivian moved to a small bar in the corner, poured 2 glasses of water, and offered one to Evan. This time he took it. Think about what you were told. A violent incident, a suspicious fire, a girl who changed her name and reinvented herself. Put those pieces together with the right spin, and you've got a narrative that could destroy my reputation, even if it's completely false. But why? Evan pressed. Who benefits from destroying your reputation? That's what I've been trying to figure out. She sat down in one of the leather chairs, suddenly looking tired in a way that made her seem more human than the polished executive he'd first encountered. I have competitors who'd love to see me removed from Meridian's leadership. I have former business partners who feel cheated by deals that went against them. I have ex-employees who blame me for decisions that cost them their jobs. The list of people with potential motives is extensive. But sophisticated enough to hack your security, clone your access codes, and orchestrate the setup with me. That's where it gets complicated. The technical expertise required suggests either a well-funded corporate rival or someone with government-level resources. But the personal nature of using my past against me suggests someone with a more intimate grudge. Evan sipped the water, his mind working through the puzzle. What if it's both? What if someone with personal motivation found allies with the resources to actually hurt you? Vivian looked at him with renewed interest. That's an astute observation. What makes you think that? Because that's how people operate when they're not powerful enough to act alone. They find others with aligned interests and pool resources. He thought of his own life, the way single parents formed support networks because none of them could handle everything individually. The question is, who has both the motive and the connections to recruit that kind of help? You're not what I expected, Mr. Brooks. Yeah, I get that a lot. He set the glass down. Look, I don't know if what you've told me is the complete truth or just another version designed to get me on your side. But I know someone used me to get to you, and now I'm caught in the middle of something that could hurt my daughter. So here's what I need from you. Honesty about what I'm actually up against. You want to know if you're in danger. I want to know if Lily's in danger, because if she is, I'll take her and disappear so fast you'll never find us. But if there's a way to resolve this without upending her entire life, I'll help however I can. Vivian stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the city for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quieter, stripped of the executive authority she usually wielded like armor. When I was your daughter's age, I believed the world was fundamentally safe, that adults would protect children, that systems existed to keep people from harm. Then I learned differently. I learned that sometimes the people supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from, that systems fail, that safety is an illusion, and that the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. She turned back to face him. I spent the last 18 years building walls around myself so thick that nothing could get through. Money, power, influence, security. All of it designed to ensure I would never be vulnerable again. And then someone walked through those walls like they were made of paper, using a maintenance worker with a daughter and a clean background to prove how easily they could reach me. You didn't answer my question. I don't think your daughter is in immediate danger. Whoever's behind this, they're focused on me. You were just a tool, and tools get discarded once they've served their purpose. But she hesitated, and Evan saw something like genuine concern in her eyes. If they think you know something, if they believe you've become more than just a pawn, then yes, you could be at risk. Then I need to know everything. Not just what you want me to know, but everything that could affect my daughter's safety. Vivian walked to a desk in the corner, pulled out a thick folder, and handed it to Evan. This is everything my security team has compiled about the incident, the investigation, and the potential suspects. It includes some information about my past that I've kept private for years. Read it, study it, make your own assessment of what you're dealing with. Evan took the folder, feeling its weight both literally and metaphorically. Why are you trusting me with this? Because you asked the right questions. Because you're more concerned about protecting your daughter than protecting yourself. And because if someone's trying to use you against me, I'd rather have you informed and allied than ignorant and manipulated. You want me as an ally. I want you as someone who understands what's really happening and can make informed decisions. What you do with that information is your choice. Evan opened the folder, scanned the first few pages. Security reports, background checks on potential suspects, analysis of the technical methods used in the breach. It was comprehensive in a way that suggested Vivian took threats very seriously. There's something else, Vivian said. The person who contacted you, Dr. Chen, she did work with me about 12 years ago. We had a disagreement about the direction of a project we were developing. She felt I was prioritizing profit over ethical considerations. I felt she was being naive about market realities. She left the company claiming I'd forced her out. I didn't. But I also didn't fight to keep her. So she has a grudge. A 12-year-old grudge that she's apparently nursed into something more active. Whether she's behind the entire operation or just being used to deliver information to you, I don't know yet. But her involvement suggests this is more personal than purely business motivated. Evan closed the folder. You're telling me all this because you want me to be your eyes and ears. If they contact me again, you want me to report back to you. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know what you're caught up in. What you do with that knowledge is your decision. Vivian returned to her chair, her posture relaxing slightly. But yes, if you're willing to share information about any future contacts, I would consider that valuable. In return, I'll ensure you and your daughter have protection. Not obvious security that would scare her or disrupt your lives, but monitoring that would alert us if any threat emerged. You're asking me to spy for you. I'm asking you to think about which side you want to be on when this situation reaches its inevitable conclusion. Someone is coming for me, Mr. Brooks. They've demonstrated sophistication, patience, and resources. When they make their real move, people nearby will get hurt. I'd prefer you and your daughter not be among them. The threat wasn't quite explicit, but it didn't need to be. Evan understood the calculation. Help Vivian, and she'd protect them. Stay neutral or work against her, and they'd be on their own when things got dangerous. I need to think about this, he said. Of course. Take the folder, review the information, and contact me when you've decided. She stood, signaling the meeting was ending. But, Mr. Brooks, one more thing. The tablet Dr. Chen gave you with the police report. I'd like it back. Evan's blood went cold. How did you know about that? Because I've been doing this a long time, and I know how these operations work. She gave you something that feels like leverage, something you could use against me if necessary. It's a classic tactic to make you feel empowered while actually compromising you. That device is almost certainly tracking your location and possibly recording your conversations. You're paranoid. I'm careful. There's a difference. Vivian's expression was sympathetic but firm. I'm not demanding you give it to me, but I'm strongly suggesting that you either destroy it or hand it over to someone who can properly analyze what it's actually doing beyond displaying information. Evan thought about the tablet, still hidden in his truck. He'd assumed it was just a data storage device, but what if Vivian was right? What if Dr. Chen had given him surveillance equipment disguised as evidence? I'll think about that too, he said finally. Fair enough. Vivian walked him to the elevator, pressed the call button. As they waited, she spoke again, her voice softer. For what it's worth, I believe you're a good father trying to do right by your daughter in a situation you never asked to be part of. That's admirable. Just remember that sometimes doing right by the people we love means making choices that feel wrong in other ways. The elevator arrived and Evan stepped inside. As the doors began to close, Vivian added one more thing. They'll contact you again, Mr. Brooks. When they do, remember that everyone in this situation is using you for something. The question is who you trust to be honest about what that something is. The doors closed, leaving Evan alone with his thoughts and a folder full of secrets that might either protect his daughter or put her in more danger. He made it back to his truck before he noticed the envelope under the windshield wiper. No markings, just a plain white envelope that definitely hadn't been there when he'd parked. Evan looked around the parking garage, seeing no one, but feeling watched nonetheless. Inside the envelope was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed Lily leaving school that afternoon, her pink backpack bright against the gray concrete. Someone had taken this picture today, had been close enough to his daughter to capture her in clear detail. The note was brief. Your meeting with Ms. Cross was noted. We hoped you'd make a wiser choice. Your daughter is lovely. It would be tragic if her father's poor decisions affected her future. Evan's hand shook as he held the photograph. All the analysis, all the careful weighing of options, all the strategic thinking evaporated in the face of a direct threat to Lily. Someone had been watching his daughter. Someone had gotten close enough to take this picture. Someone wanted him to know that his daughter was vulnerable. He pulled out his phone, started to dial Marcus, then stopped. If he reported this, Meridian Security would get involved. There would be investigations, questions, police reports. Lily would be scared. Their lives would be turned upside down. But if he didn't report it, he'd be facing this threat alone. The burner phone in his pocket buzzed. Evan pulled it out, saw a text message from an unknown number. The photograph was just a reminder of what's at stake. We don't want to hurt your daughter. We just want you to stay neutral. Don't help Cross. Don't interfere. Go back to your normal life and let the adults handle their business. Do that, and Lily stays safe. Evan stared at the message, feeling rage and fear warring in his chest. These people, whoever they were, had just crossed a line that made everything else irrelevant. They'd threatened his daughter, they'd used her as leverage, and they'd badly underestimated what a father would do to protect his child. He got into his truck, locked the doors, and opened the folder Vivian had given him. If he was going to protect Lily, he needed to understand everything. Not just what Vivian wanted him to know, or what Dr. Chen had revealed, but the complete picture of what was happening and who was involved. 2 hours later, sitting in his truck with the dome light on, Evan had read through most of the folder. The security analysis was thorough, detailing multiple potential suspects and ranking them by capability and motive. But one name kept appearing in different contexts, always peripheral, never quite central. Dr. Sarah Chen had worked for Meridian 12 years ago on a project involving data security systems. She'd left under disputed circumstances, claiming Vivian had stolen her research and taken credit for her innovations. She'd sued, and the case had been settled confidentially. Since then, she'd worked for several of Meridian's competitors, always in security-related roles, always seeming to move on after a year or two. But the interesting part was her current employer, a private security consulting firm that specialized in corporate espionage and competitive intelligence gathering. Legal, technically, but operating in ethical gray zones that made their work deeply questionable. Evan pulled out his personal phone, did some research on the firm. They'd been involved in several high-profile cases where companies had used legally obtained information to destroy competitors. Nothing illegal, nothing that could be prosecuted, but aggressive and ruthless. The kind of firm that would know how to orchestrate exactly what had happened to him. His phone rang. Unknown number, but not the burner. His actual phone. "Mr. Brooks?" Dr. Chen's voice calm as ever. "I understand you met with Ms. Cross tonight. I hope she was persuasive." "You're having me followed." "We're monitoring the situation. There's a difference. You photographed my daughter. You threatened her." There was a pause. When Dr. Chen spoke again, her voice had lost some of its calm certainty. "That wasn't us. We would never involve a child." "Bullshit. You've been manipulating me from the beginning. The fake work order, the setup, the meeting in the park. You've been using me to get to Cross, and now you're threatening my daughter to keep me in line." "Mr. Brooks, listen to me carefully. We gave you information. We warned you about Vivian Cross. We did not send you that photograph or that threatening message. That's someone else. Someone who's escalating this situation in ways we never intended." Evan felt the world tilting again. "Someone else? You're saying there's a third party involved?" "We're saying this situation is more complicated than we realized. Vivian Cross has enemies, yes, we're among them. But we're not the only ones, and apparently we're not the most dangerous ones." "Then who sent me the photo?" "We don't know. But we're trying to find out, because if someone's willing to threaten a child to achieve their objectives, they're playing a much more dangerous game than we are." Evan closed his eyes, trying to process this new information. If Dr. Chen was telling the truth, then there were at least 3 factions in play. Vivian and her security team, Dr. Chen and whoever she worked with, and an unknown third party willing to threaten children. If she was lying, then this was another manipulation designed to confuse him and make him distrust everyone. "Why should I believe you?" "You shouldn't. You shouldn't believe anyone right now, including Vivian Cross. But you should protect your daughter, and that means understanding who the real threats are." "Then tell me, who's behind this?" "We're working on that. When we know, we'll share the information. In the meantime, be careful. Watch your daughter closely. And don't assume that Vivian Cross has your best interests at heart just because she's been charming and helpful." The line went dead. Evan sat in the darkness of his truck, surrounded by information that contradicted itself, and people who all claimed to be telling him the truth while clearly pursuing their own agendas. He thought about the photograph of Lily, about how vulnerable she looked in her pink backpack, completely unaware of the threat swirling around her father. He made a decision then, one that felt both reckless and necessary. He was done being anyone's pawn. He was done waiting for others to tell him what was safe and what was dangerous. If someone was threatening his daughter, he'd find out who and deal with them directly. And if that meant working with Vivian Cross or Dr. Chen or against both of them, then that's what he'd do. But first, he needed help from someone he could trust. Someone with skills he didn't have and no stake in the corporate games being played around him. Evan pulled up his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and found a name he hadn't called in 3 years. Jimmy Torres. His old construction foreman, who'd left the industry to start his own private investigation business, specializing in surveillance and counter-surveillance. "Jimmy," Evan said when his old friend answered, "I need your help. And I need you to not ask too many questions about why." "Evan? Man, it's been forever. What's going on?" "I'm in trouble. Not legal trouble, but someone's threatening my daughter, and I need to know who they are and how to stop them." There was a pause. Then Jimmy's voice came back, serious and focused. "Tell me everything." So Evan did. He told Jimmy about the wrong door, the setup, the corporate intrigue, Dr. Chen's warnings, Vivian's explanations, and finally, the photograph of Lily with its implicit threat. He laid out everything he knew and everything he suspected, holding nothing back. When he finished, Jimmy was quiet for a long moment. "Jesus, Evan, you've stepped into some serious shit." "I know. Can you help?" "Yeah, I can help. Come by my office tomorrow morning. Bring that tablet Dr. Chen gave you and any other devices you think might be compromised. We'll sweep them, see what we're really dealing with, and I'll start running background on these players, see what I can find that maybe they don't want found." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. If these people are as connected as they sound, digging into them might bring heat we're not ready for." "I don't care about heat. I care about keeping my daughter safe." "Then we'll make sure she stays safe. But Evan, You might have to do things you're not comfortable with. You might have to make choices that keep you up at night. You ready for that? Evan thought about Lily's face, about the sound of her laugh when she was truly happy, about the way she trusted him completely to keep her safe from all the dangers the world could throw at her. "I'm ready," he said. After he hung up, Evan sat in his truck for a few more minutes, looking at the photograph of his daughter and feeling something hard and cold settle into his chest. Fear was still there, but underneath it was something else, something that felt like purpose. Whoever had threatened Lily had made a critical mistake. They'd assumed he was weak, expendable, someone who would fold under pressure. They were about to learn differently. Evan started the truck and drove home, his mind already working through plans and possibilities. Tomorrow he'd meet with Jimmy. Tomorrow he'd start gathering his own intelligence, building his own understanding of who was really behind this and what they wanted. Tonight, he'd check every lock on their apartment twice, set up his phone to record any sounds near Lily's room, and sleep in the chair outside her door with a baseball bat across his lap. Because if anyone tried to get to his daughter, they'd have to go through him first. And Evan Brooks, maintenance worker and single father, was discovering he was capable of far more than he'd ever imagined when it came to protecting the person he loved most in the world. Jimmy Torres's office occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse in an industrial area that had seen better days but maintained enough legitimate business to avoid feeling completely abandoned. Evan arrived at 8 the next morning after dropping Lily at school with instructions to stay with her teacher at all times and not talk to any strangers. She'd looked at him with confusion that bordered on concern, and he'd hated putting that worry in her eyes. But fear was better than ignorance when someone had already proven they could get close enough to photograph her. The office itself was sparse but professional, filled with equipment Evan didn't recognize, and several computer monitors displaying what looked like surveillance footage from various locations. Jimmy stood when Evan entered, and they clasped hands in the way men do when friendship runs deeper than regular contact might suggest. "You look like hell," Jimmy said bluntly. "Didn't sleep much." "Yeah, I wouldn't either if someone threatened my kid." Jimmy gestured to a chair near his desk. "Let's see what you brought me." Evan handed over the tablet Dr. Chen had given him, along with the burner phone and even his own phone for good measure. Jimmy took them to a workbench covered in tools and electronic equipment, connected the tablet to something that looked like a modified laptop, and started running diagnostics. "So, while that's scanning," Jimmy said, his eyes on the monitor, "tell me more about this Vivian Cross. You trust her?" "I don't know. She gave me information that contradicts what Dr. Chen told me. She seems genuinely threatened by whatever's happening. But she's also a billionaire CEO who's built her entire life on control and manipulation, so trusting her feels naive." "Smart. Never trust anyone who has more to gain from lying than telling the truth." Jimmy frowned at his screen. "Okay, so the tablet. It's got tracking software embedded in the firmware. Not obvious stuff, but it's definitely phoning home every time it connects to any network. Location data, usage patterns, probably screenshots of whatever you viewed." "Dr. Chen's been watching everything I did with it." "Yep. And the burner phone?" Jimmy switched to analyzing that device. "Same deal. This isn't a clean burner. It's compromised from the factory, designed to look secure while actually being completely transparent to whoever set it up." Evan felt anger rising in his chest. So everything I thought was private information was actually being monitored. Welcome to modern surveillance, my friend. The scary part is how professional this setup is. This isn't something you buy on the dark web. This is custom work, probably military or intelligence-grade technology adapted for private use. Whoever's behind this has serious resources and serious connections. "What about my personal phone?" Jimmy ran the same diagnostics. After a few minutes, he looked up with an expression that mixed concern and professional appreciation. "Your phone is clean, no malware, no tracking beyond the standard stuff your carrier does. But here's the interesting part." He pulled up a log of something technical. "Someone tried to compromise it, multiple times over the past week. Sophisticated attempts that would have worked on most devices, but they all failed." "Why?" "Because you've got enterprise-level security on a personal phone. Military-grade encryption, automated threat detection, the works. This isn't standard consumer stuff. Someone installed protection on your device without you knowing about it." Evan thought about Marcus. about Meridian's security team, about Vivian's promise to keep him and Lily safe. Vivian's people, they must have done it remotely. That's my guess. Which means she's been protecting you even while you were deciding whether to trust her. Jimmy leaned back in his chair. So here's what I'm seeing. You've got at least two factions actively interested in you. Dr. Chen and whoever she works for, who are using sophisticated surveillance to track your movements and information access. And Vivian Cross's security apparatus, which is apparently trying to protect you from that surveillance. The question is, who took the photo of your daughter? Dr. Chen claimed it wasn't her people. Could be true. Could be a lie designed to make you think there's a third party so you trust her more. Or could actually be true, and there really is someone else in play. Jimmy pulled up something else on his computer. I ran preliminary backgrounds on the key players last night. Dr. Sarah Chen, formerly employed by Meridian Corporation, now working for Sentinel Strategic Solutions. That's a private intelligence firm with clients that include some very questionable corporate entities and at least two foreign governments that aren't exactly allies. She's not just a disgruntled former employee. She's a professional operative working for a company that specializes in industrial espionage and competitive intelligence. The fact that she personally contacted you instead of using intermediaries suggests this is personal for her, but she's got backing from an organization with serious capabilities. Evan processed this information, feeling the situation growing more complex with each revelation. What about the photograph? Can you trace where it came from? Not from the photo itself, but I can analyze the envelope and see if there are any forensic markers. Leave it with me. Jimmy turned back to his monitors. But Evan, here's what concerns me most. You're caught between professional operators who do this for a living, and they're all assuming you're either naive enough to manipulate or scared enough to control. The fact that you came to me suggests you're neither, which is good. But it also means when they realize you're actively investigating instead of just reacting, they're going to escalate. Let them escalate. I need to know who threatened my daughter. I get that. I do. But you need to think strategically here. Right now, you're a pawn everyone's trying to move around the board. The moment you become a player making your own moves, you become a threat, and threats get eliminated. The words hung heavy in the air between them. Evan thought about Lily, about the life he'd built for her, about how easily it could all come apart if he made the wrong choice. I can't just do nothing, he said finally. I can't sit around waiting for someone to decide my daughter's safety doesn't matter anymore. I'm not saying do nothing. I'm saying be smart about how you act. Jimmy pulled out a notebook, started writing. Here's what I suggest. We gather intelligence quietly. I've got contacts in law enforcement, private security, even some people in the intelligence community who owe me favors. We build a complete picture of who's involved, what they want, and what leverage we have. Then, when we understand the full situation, we make our move. How long will that take? A week? Maybe 2 if we're thorough. I don't know if I have 2 weeks. Then we work faster. Jimmy's expression was serious but supportive. But Evan, you need to understand something. Once you start actively investigating these people, there's no going back. You'll be committed to seeing this through, wherever it leads. You ready for that? Evan thought about the photograph, about the implied threat, about the feeling of helplessness that had consumed him sitting in his truck last night. He thought about who he'd been before walking through that wrong door, a maintenance worker content with anonymity and stability, and who he was becoming now, someone willing to fight back against forces far more powerful than himself. I'm ready, he said. They spent the next 3 hours planning. Jimmy outlined a strategy for gathering information without alerting the various parties to what they were doing. He'd use his law enforcement contacts to pull records on Sentinel Strategic Solutions and their key operatives. He'd tap his corporate security network to gather intelligence on Vivian Cross that went beyond the official biography. And he'd employ some technical surveillance of his own to monitor communications around Evan without anyone knowing they were being watched. One more thing, Jimmy said as Evan prepared to leave. You need to decide how much you're going to share with Vivian Cross. She's clearly got resources that could help us, but she's also got her own agenda. Using her information without becoming obligated to her is a delicate balance. I'll figure it out. Yeah, I bet you will. Jimmy walked him to the door. Hey, Evan. For what it's worth, I'm glad you called me. Whatever happens, at least you're not facing this alone anymore. The words settled something in Evan's chest that had been tight since he'd found the photograph. He wasn't alone. He had an ally, someone with skills and resources who'd help protect Lily without trying to manipulate him for their own purposes. As Evan drove back toward his apartment, his phone rang. Marcus. Mr. Brooks, we need to talk. In person. Can you come to the tower? I'm on administrative leave, remember? This isn't about your employment status. It's about your safety. Something's happened that changes the situation. Marcus's voice was tight with controlled urgency. Please. It's important. Evan thought about ignoring the request, but curiosity and concern overrode caution. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The tower felt different entering it now, knowing what he knew about the surveillance and security systems, the hidden wars being fought in its corridors. Marcus met him in the lobby and escorted him to a secure conference room that Evan recognized from his first encounter with security after the incident. Vivian Cross was already there, along with two other people Evan didn't recognize. A man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit, and a woman maybe 30 with the alert, assessing eyes of someone trained to notice everything. Mr. Brooks, Vivian said, standing as he entered. Thank you for coming. This is Robert Chen, my corporate attorney, and Agent Lisa Morrison from the FBI. Evan felt his stomach drop. FBI? Agent Morrison extended her hand, her grip firm and professional. Mr. Brooks, I understand this situation has been stressful for you. I'm here because what began as a corporate security incident has escalated into something that falls under federal jurisdiction. I don't understand. Sit down, Vivian said, her tone gentle but firm. This will take some explanation. Evan sat, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. Federal involvement meant this was bigger than corporate espionage. It meant crimes that crossed state lines or involved national security. It meant he'd stumbled into something far more serious than he'd imagined. Agent Morrison pulled out a tablet, called up a series of photographs. Are you familiar with any of these individuals? Evan studied the images. Most were unfamiliar, but one caught his attention. Dr. Sarah Chen, though the photo was from many years ago and labeled with a different name. That one, he said, pointing. I know her as Dr. Sarah Chen. She contacted me, gave me information about Ms. Cross. Her real name is Sarah Zhao, Morrison said. She's a foreign intelligence operative who's been operating under various identities in the United States for approximately 15 years. She worked for Meridian Corporation under false credentials, gained access to classified technology the company was developing for the Department of Defense, and has been selling information to hostile foreign governments ever since. The room seemed to tilt. Evan gripped the edge of the table, trying to process what he was hearing. She told me she was a former employee with a grudge. She gave me information about Ms. Cross's past. Information designed to manipulate you into distrusting Ms. Cross and potentially helping Zhao access sensitive areas of this building. Morrison pulled up more documents. We've been tracking Zhao for 3 years, waiting for her to make a move significant enough that we could arrest her entire network, not just her. When Meridian's security team reported the breach involving you, it triggered alerts in our system. We realized Zhao was making her play. Her play for what? Vivian spoke up. Meridian holds several defense contracts involving advanced encryption technology. Technology that, if compromised, would give hostile nations the ability to crack secure communications used by our military and intelligence agencies. That's why I was appointed CEO 5 years ago. My background isn't just business. I spent 6 years working in signals intelligence before going to business school. The government wanted someone with security clearance and understanding of the technology in charge of protecting it. Evan looked at her with new understanding. You're not just a CEO. You're an asset. I'm a civilian now, but yes, I maintain clearance and work closely with oversight agencies to ensure sensitive technology stays secure. Vivian's expression was carefully controlled. When the breach occurred, when you walked into my suite, we initially thought it was exactly what it appeared to be, an embarrassing incident caused by a security failure. But the more we investigated, the more we realized it was the opening move in something much larger. Agent Morrison took over again. Zhao's pattern is to identify pressure points, create chaos and confusion, then exploit the resulting gaps in security to access what she's really after. Using you to embarrass Ms. Cross, making you question her integrity, positioning herself as a concerned whistleblower, all of that was designed to distract from her real objective. Which is? There's a secure server room on the 63rd floor. It contains backups of all Meridian's classified work, including encryption keys that would compromise multiple defense systems if exposed. Zhao needs physical access to that room to bypass the air-gapped security, but it requires biometric authentication from someone with appropriate clearance, and it requires that person to be under duress or coercion so their entry appears legitimate rather than triggering additional security protocols. Evan felt cold understanding wash over him. She was going to use me to force Ms. Cross to give her access. That's our assessment. Create a situation where you appear to be in danger, threaten your daughter, then offer Ms. Cross a choice, provide access to the server room, or watch an innocent man and his child suffer consequences. The photograph, Evan said, his voice tight. Someone sent me a picture of my daughter with a threatening note. Morrison's expression darkened. When did this happen? Last night, after I met with Ms. Cross. Do you still have it? Evan pulled out the envelope he'd taken to Jimmy's office, handed it to Morrison. She examined it carefully, then looked at Vivian with an expression that suggested they'd just confirmed something they'd suspected. This is Zhao's work, Morrison said. We've seen this pattern before. Targeted, personal threats designed to create maximum fear with minimum actual risk. She photographs the target, proves she can get close, then leverages that fear to control behavior. So, my daughter's not actually in danger? I didn't say that. Morrison's tone was firm but not unkind. Zhao is a professional who prefers manipulation to violence, but she's also demonstrated willingness to escalate when necessary. The fact that she threatened your daughter means she sees you as crucial to her plan, which means yes, there's real danger here. Evan felt rage building in his chest, hot and consuming. Then arrest her. You know who she is, where she is, end this. It's not that simple, Robert Chen, the attorney, spoke for the first time. His voice was measured, careful. Agent Morrison's investigation requires building a case that includes Zhao's entire network. Arresting her prematurely would alert her associates and allow them to disappear. The Bureau needs more time to identify all the players and gather sufficient evidence for prosecution. How much more time? We're close, Morrison said. Days, not weeks. Zhao's planning something soon, we can feel it, but we need to catch her in the act of actually attempting to access the classified material. That's when we'll have irrefutable evidence not just of espionage, but of conspiracy to commit it. And in the meantime, my daughter's a target. In the meantime, we protect your daughter. Vivian leaned forward, her eyes intense and focused. Mr. Brooks, I know you have no reason to trust me completely. I know this situation has given you every reason to be suspicious of everyone involved, but I'm asking you to work with us. Let us put protective surveillance on your daughter, on your apartment, on anywhere you go regularly. Let us keep you both safe while the FBI finishes building their case. Evan wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at him to take Lily and run, to get as far away from this insanity as possible, but he also understood that running wouldn't solve anything. If Zhao was as professional as they claimed, she'd find him eventually, and then he'd be facing her without any of the resources currently being offered to protect him. What do you need from me? He asked finally. We need you to go back to your normal routine, Morrison said. Act like you're scared but compliant. If Zhao contacts you again, which we expect she will, you engage with her, find out what she wants, what her timeline is, what her specific demands might be. We'll have you wired so we can monitor everything. The moment she makes an overt move toward the classified material, we move in and arrest her entire operation. You want me to be bait? We want you to help us catch a dangerous foreign operative before she steals technology that could cost American lives. Morrison's voice was hard now, demanding. I understand this isn't what you signed up for when you took a maintenance job, but you're involved now, whether you like it or not. The question is whether you're going to help us resolve this safely or whether you're going to try to handle it yourself and potentially make everything worse. Evan thought about Jimmy's advice, about gathering intelligence and making strategic moves. But this was different. This wasn't corporate intrigue or personal grudges. This was national security, federal crimes, and professional spies who played for stakes far beyond anything he'd imagined. If I do this, he said slowly, I want guarantees. Written guarantees that my daughter will be protected. That if anything goes wrong, you'll get her to safety before worrying about your investigation. That her welfare comes first, not your case. Morrison and the attorney exchanged glances. Then Morrison nodded. We can arrange that. Protective custody protocols for your daughter, triggered automatically if any threat materializes. She'll be guarded by federal agents, moved to a secure location if necessary, and kept completely safe until this is resolved. And after, when this is over, assuming we all survive it, you go back to your life, Vivian said. No obligations, no strings attached. If you want to continue working at Meridian, you'll have a position. If you want to go somewhere else, I'll provide references and compensation that ensures you and your daughter have stability. Your choice. Evan studied the faces around the table, trying to read their true intentions beneath the professional masks. Morrison seemed genuinely committed to stopping Zhao, though he suspected her concern for him and Lily was secondary to her larger mission. The attorney was clearly there to protect Meridian's interests, which might align with Evan's safety but weren't primarily focused on it. And Vivian, complicated and controlled, seemed to genuinely want to protect him, but also needed him functional and compliant to resolve her own crisis. I'll do it, he said finally, but I have conditions beyond my daughter's protection. Name them, Morrison said. I want complete transparency about what you're asking me to do. No surprises, no sudden changes in plan that put me in danger without warning. I want to know exactly what risks I'm taking and why. Agreed. And I want regular updates on the investigation. Not just when you need something from me, but constant communication so I understand what's happening and can make informed decisions about my own safety. Morrison hesitated, then nodded. Within the bounds of operational security, yes. I can commit to that. One more thing. Evan looked at Vivian. When this is over, I want the truth. The complete truth about your past, about what really happened with your stepfather and the fire, about all of it. No more carefully curated versions designed to manage my perception. Vivian held his gaze for a long moment, and Evan saw something shift in her expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition that he wasn't going to be satisfied with partial truths anymore. When this is over, she said quietly, you'll have the complete truth. I promise you that. They spent the next hour going over details. Morrison explained the surveillance equipment Evan would carry, the protocols for contacting the FBI if Zhao made contact, the protective measures being put in place around Lily's school and their apartment. The attorney outlined the legal protections being arranged, including immunity from any charges that might arise from Evan's cooperation with Zhao's apparent demands. By the time Evan left the building, his head was spinning with information and implications. He was now officially working with the FBI to catch a foreign spy. His daughter was under federal protection, and he'd committed to acting as bait in an operation that could either end with arrests and safety or with catastrophic failure and consequences he didn't want to imagine. He drove to pick up Lily from school, hyper-aware of the surveillance team Morrison had assigned to follow him. They were professional enough that he couldn't spot them directly, but knowing they were there felt both reassuring and claustrophobic. His life was no longer entirely his own. Every move was being watched, analyzed, incorporated into some larger strategic plan. Lily bounced into the truck full of stories about her day, completely oblivious to the federal agents watching from 3 different vehicles positioned around the school. Evan forced himself to smile, to engage with her chatter about art class and the spelling test she'd aced, all while scanning the parking lot for any signs of Zhao or her associates. Dad, you're acting weird, Lily said as they drove home. Just tired, sweetheart. You've been tired a lot lately. I know, work stuff, but it'll get better soon. She studied him with the unnervingly perceptive gaze children sometimes develop when they sense adults are keeping secrets. Is everything okay? Really okay? Evan wanted to lie, to reassure her that everything was fine, but he also knew that children could sense dishonesty, and maintaining her trust was crucial if he was going to keep her safe. Things are a little complicated right now, he said carefully. But I'm handling it, and you're safe. That's the most important thing. You're safe, and I'm making sure you stay that way. Promise? I promise. She seemed satisfied with that, turning her attention back to describing the butterfly life cycle project her class was starting. Evan drove home, parked in their usual spot, and walked her upstairs with one hand on her shoulder and his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Inside the apartment, he noticed small things that had changed. A smoke detector that looked slightly newer than the others. A power outlet that sat at a marginally different angle. The FBI had been here, installing their surveillance equipment while he'd been at the meeting. His home was now a monitored space, his privacy sacrificed for security. That night, after Lily was asleep, Evan sat at his kitchen table with the equipment Morrison had given him. A tiny microphone that clipped inside his collar, virtually invisible. A panic button disguised as a key fob. And a modified phone that looked identical to his regular device, but was actually hardened against tampering and equipped with direct emergency communication to the FBI team. He thought about calling Jimmy, updating him on the federal involvement, but Morrison had been clear. The fewer people who knew about the operation, the better. Jimmy would understand eventually, but for now, Evan was on his own in a way that felt both isolating and strangely clarifying. His phone buzzed. The burner phone Zhao had given him, which Morrison's team had modified to allow them to monitor all communications. A text message appeared. Tomorrow night. Storm approaching the city. Power may become unreliable. That's when we'll need your cooperation. Be ready. Evan stared at the message, his heart rate accelerating. This was it. The move Morrison had predicted, coming faster than expected. Tomorrow night, whatever Zhao was planning would happen. He texted back, keeping his response simple as Morrison had instructed. What do you need me to do? The response came immediately. Just be available. We'll contact you with specific instructions when the time comes. And Mr. Brooks? Don't do anything foolish like contacting authorities. Your daughter's safety depends on your complete cooperation. The threat was explicit now, no longer veiled in careful language. Evan felt rage and fear warring in his chest, but he forced himself to respond calmly. I understand. He immediately called the number Morrison had given him, reported the exchange. She answered on the first ring, her voice alert despite the late hour. We saw the messages, she said. The storm angle is smart. During severe weather, security systems can become unreliable, backup power creates vulnerabilities, and emergency protocols distract personnel. She's planning to use the chaos to make her move. What do I do? Exactly what she asks. We'll have additional teams in position tomorrow. When she makes contact with specific demands, you comply. Lead her toward the server room like she wants. But Mr. Brooks? Morrison's voice became harder. If at any point you feel like this is going wrong, if you sense danger that we're not seeing, you use that panic button immediately. Your safety and your daughter's safety matter more than this arrest. Do you understand? I understand. After he hung up, Evan stood at Lily's bedroom door, watching her sleep peacefully with her stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest. She looked so small, so vulnerable, so completely trusting that her father would keep her safe from all the dangers the world could throw at them. Tomorrow night, a storm would hit the city. And in that storm, Zhao would make her move. The FBI would attempt to stop her, and Evan would be caught in the middle, trying to protect his daughter while playing a role in something far larger than himself. He thought about the man he'd been 2 weeks ago, content with his quiet life and simple routine. That man felt like a stranger now. Everything had changed with one wrong door, one moment of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe, Evan thought as he watched his daughter sleep, maybe he'd always been capable of this. Maybe the quiet maintenance worker had always contained the capacity to face down foreign spies and federal investigations when his daughter's safety was threatened. Maybe crisis didn't change people so much as reveal who they'd always been underneath the ordinary surface. Tomorrow would tell him which version was true. Tonight, he just stood guard, watching over the most important person in his world and preparing himself for whatever was coming with the storm. The storm arrived exactly as predicted, rolling into the city with the kind of dramatic intensity that made the evening news lead with warnings about staying indoors. Evan watched from his apartment window as the sky darkened to an unnatural greenish gray, lightning fracturing the clouds in jagged patterns that illuminated the skyline in stuttering bursts. Rain began as scattered drops, then escalated into sheets that battered against the glass with surprising violence. Lily pressed against his side, watching the storm with the mixture of fear and fascination children feel toward powerful natural phenomena. "It's really loud," she said, her voice small. "It is, but we're safe inside." Evan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, trying to project a calm he didn't feel. The FBI had moved her protective detail into the building, posing as new tenants in the apartment directly below theirs. Morrison had assured him they'd extract Lily to a secure location the moment Zhao made contact with him, before he ever left to meet whatever demand she'd make. "I don't like storms," Lily admitted. "They make me think about things being out of control." Evan looked down at his daughter, struck by the wisdom in her simple observation. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Me too." His phone buzzed. The regular one, not the burner. A text from an unknown number. "Federal agents in your building, apartment 3B. Did you really think we wouldn't notice?" Evan's blood went cold. He immediately pressed the panic button disguised as his key fob, then texted back with shaking hands. "I didn't know they were there. I swear." The response came quickly. "Doesn't matter now. Plans have changed. You and your daughter need to leave immediately. Come to the Meridian Tower. Parking garage level B3. You have 20 minutes before we assume you're not cooperating." Before Evan could respond, someone pounded on his door. He moved Lily behind him, his heart hammering, then looked through the peephole to see Morrison and two other agents, all wearing tactical gear and looking ready for immediate action. He opened the door. "She knows you're here. She's demanding I bring Lily to the tower." Morrison's expression went hard. "Absolutely not. We're extracting both of you right now. If I don't show up, she'll disappear. You'll lose your entire investigation. I don't care about the investigation more than I care about a child's safety." Morrison turned to one of her agents. "Get the girl ready for transport. Full protective protocols." "Wait." Evan grabbed Morrison's arm. "What if there's another way? What if I go to the tower alone, tell Zhao that your people stopped me from bringing Lily? Make her think I tried to comply but couldn't. She'll know you're lying. She'll assume you're working with us, and then she'll either kill you or disappear, and we'll have accomplished nothing except putting you in danger. But if she thinks I'm desperate enough, scared enough, she might believe I'm still trying to negotiate." Evan's mind was racing, trying to think like someone caught between impossible choices. "I tell her the FBI won't let me leave with Lily. I beg her for another option. I make her tell me what she really wants instead of using my daughter as leverage." Morrison studied him, her expression calculating. "You're suggesting you voluntarily walk into a hostage situation." "I'm suggesting I give her a target that isn't my 7-year-old daughter." One of the other agents spoke up. "It could work. If he's wired, if we have teams in position at the tower, we might be able to use his meeting with Zhao to finally get visual confirmation of her entire operation." "Or he could get killed," Morrison said flatly. "I'm already involved. I'm already at risk." Evan glanced back at Lily, who was watching the adults with wide, frightened eyes. "But she doesn't have to be. Get her somewhere safe. Let me go to the tower and deal with Zhao. If I can buy you enough time to arrest her whole network, then this ends tonight instead of dragging on with my daughter living in fear." Morrison was quiet for a long moment, clearly running through scenarios and probabilities. Finally, she nodded. "We do this my way. Full tactical support, immediate extraction protocols if anything goes wrong. You wear a wire and a tracker. You follow my instructions exactly. And the second I think this is compromised, we pull you out whether you agree or not. Deal." The next 15 minutes were chaos. Federal agents swarmed the apartment, preparing Evan with equipment and going over emergency procedures. Lily was wrapped in a jacket and escorted downstairs by two agents who promised her they were taking her somewhere fun and safe while her daddy handled some boring work stuff. She looked back at Evan with confusion and fear, and he forced himself to smile and wave like this was all completely normal. "I love you, sweetheart," he called out. "I'll see you very soon." "Promise?" Her voice was so small, so scared. "I promise." Then she was gone, hustled out into the storm and into a vehicle that would take her to a federal safe house outside the city. Evan watched until he couldn't see the taillights anymore, feeling like his heart had been ripped out of his chest and driven away into the darkness. Morrison handed him an earpiece, nearly invisible once positioned. I'll be able to communicate with you through this. You'll hear me, but Zhao won't. Tap your collar twice if you need immediate extraction. Tap it 3 times if you've identified something critical we need to know about. Otherwise, just let the conversation play out naturally. What if she searches me for equipment? The wire is built into your shirt. It would take a professional sweep to detect it, and even then it's designed to look like a manufacturing defect in the fabric. The tracker is subcutaneous, injected under your skin. She'd have to physically cut you open to find it. Evan looked down at his forearm, where Morrison had injected something while explaining the plan. A tiny bump, barely noticeable. The idea that he was literally carrying a tracking device inside his body should have felt invasive, but instead it felt like a lifeline. What do I tell her about Lily? The truth, modified. Say federal agents detained you when you tried to leave. Say they have your daughter in protective custody and won't release her unless you cooperate with them. Tell Zhao you're trapped between 2 impossible choices and you're hoping she can help you find a way out that keeps your daughter safe. Appeal to her humanity. Appeal to her ego. Make her think she's smarter than us, that she can outmaneuver federal law enforcement. Operatives like Zhao have massive egos. Use that. Evan nodded, trying to memorize all the instructions while his mind screamed at him that this was insane, that he should just run, take Lily, and disappear somewhere none of these people could ever find them. But he also knew that running solved nothing. Zhao would find them eventually, and next time there might not be FBI agents ready to intervene. The drive to Meridian Tower took 12 minutes through storm-ravaged streets. Lightning illuminated the building in stark flashes, making it look somehow ominous despite its modern glass and steel construction. Evan parked on level B3 as instructed, killed the engine and sat in the darkness listening to rain hammer against the concrete structure. Morrison's voice came through his earpiece. We have teams positioned on multiple floors, snipers with visual on the garage entrance, tactical units ready to breach if necessary. You're not alone in there. Doesn't feel that way, Evan muttered. I know, but you're doing great. Just remember, Zhao needs you for something that gives you power, even if it doesn't feel like it. Now get out of the truck and head toward the stairwell on the north side. That's where she'll likely make contact. Evan climbed out into the dim garage, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The parking level was nearly empty, just a handful of vehicles scattered across acres of concrete. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly yellow glow that made shadows seem deeper and more threatening than they should be. He'd made it maybe 30 feet when a figure stepped out from behind a support column. Not Zhao, but a man Evan didn't recognize. Tall, athletic build, moving with the kind of fluid precision that suggested military training. Mr. Brooks. The man's voice was accented, though Evan couldn't place the origin. I need you to stop there and put your hands where I can see them. Evan complied, raising his hands slowly. I'm just here to talk to Dr. Chen, to work something out. I'm sure you are. The man approached, pulled out a device that looked like a small tablet, and began running it over Evan's body. A scanner, checking for electronics. Evan felt his stomach drop. Morrison had said the equipment was hard to detect, but clearly Zhao was taking no chances. The scanner beeped near Evan's chest, and the man's expression hardened. You're wired. Of course I'm wired. The FBI showed up at my apartment. They have my daughter. You think they'd just let me walk out without monitoring what I do? Evan kept his voice desperate, scared, exactly what someone in his supposed situation would sound like. They said if I cooperate with them, they'll keep Lily safe. If I don't, they'll charge me with conspiracy or obstruction or whatever else they can make stick. I'm trapped, and I don't know what to do. The man studied him, the scanner still in his hand. Dr. Chen anticipated this possibility. Come with me. He led Evan toward the stairwell, moving with constant awareness of their surroundings. Through his earpiece, Evan heard Morrison coordinating with her teams, tracking their movement through the building. They climbed stairs in silence, passing the ground floor, then the second floor, finally emerging onto the third floor, where executive offices sat dark and empty. Zhao waited in a corner office, standing near the windows and watching the storm rage outside. She turned as they entered, her expression calm but assessing. Mr. Brooks, I see you've brought federal monitoring with you. I didn't have a choice. They grabbed me before I could leave. And your daughter? They took her. Protective custody, they called it. They said she'd be safe as long as I cooperate with their investigation into you. Zhao smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Clever. Use the child as leverage while claiming to protect her. The FBI does love their manipulative tactics. She moved closer, studying Evan's face. So now you're here, wired and tracked, probably with tactical teams positioned throughout this building, and yet you still came. Why? Because I need this to end. I need my daughter back, and I need both of us to be safe. You said you could help with that. I said I needed your cooperation. That's different from offering help. Then what do you need from me? What's worth threatening a 7-year-old girl? Zhao's expression shifted, something like annoyance crossing her features. I never threatened your daughter, Mr. Brooks. That photograph, that message, that wasn't my operation. Someone else has been interfering in my work, trying to accelerate my timeline and force my hand. Someone who doesn't understand that patience and precision are more valuable than fear and urgency. Through his earpiece, Morrison's voice was sharp. She's telling the truth. We've been tracking a third party, separate from Zhao's operation. Keep her talking about it. Who? Evan asked. Who else is involved in this? That's what I've been trying to determine. Zhao moved to the desk, pulled up something on a laptop. I've spent weeks planning how to access Meridian's classified servers. Careful, methodical planning that would have worked without anyone getting hurt. Then suddenly, someone starts escalating, breaking into Ms. Cross's suite in ways I didn't authorize, setting you up more dramatically than necessary. And yes, threatening your daughter when I specifically instructed my team that children were off limits. Why should I believe you? Because I'm a professional, Mr. Brooks. I steal information. I don't murder innocent people, and I certainly don't threaten children. That's inefficient and creates unnecessary complications. She turned the laptop toward him. These are communications I intercepted from someone claiming to be part of my operation but who I've never met. Someone who's been using my mission as cover for their own agenda. Evan studied the screen, seeing messages that referenced him, Lily, even detailed information about his daily routine. Morrison's voice came through again. Get her to identify who's sending those messages. We need confirmation. Do you know who it is? Evan asked. I have suspicions, but what matters right now is that we have a mutual problem. Someone wants both of us compromised. They want me arrested before I can complete my mission, and they want you caught in the crossfire, possibly as a scapegoat who takes the blame for security breaches you didn't commit. That doesn't make sense. Why would anyone want that? Because it serves Vivian Cross's interests perfectly. Zhao's voice was cold now, certain. Think about it. She gets to play the victim of foreign espionage. She gets to eliminate me as a threat. And she gets to remove you as a witness to whatever really happened the day you walked into her suite. You're saying Ms. Cross is behind the third party. I'm saying someone with access to Meridian's security systems. Someone who understands how to manipulate both my operation and federal investigations. Someone who benefits from chaos that eliminates her enemies while making her look like an innocent target. Who else fits that profile? Morrison's voice was urgent now. She's trying to turn you against Cross. Don't buy into it. We've vetted Vivian completely. But Evan remembered the photograph of Lily, the professional quality of it, the way it had appeared right after his meeting with Vivian. He remembered how quickly the FBI had gotten involved, how conveniently they'd offered protection while also putting him in position to be used as bait. He remembered Vivian's eyes when she'd told him about her past, the controlled emotion that could have been genuine trauma or could have been performance. I don't know what to believe anymore, he said, and that at least was completely honest. Zhao nodded, something like sympathy crossing her face. Then believe this. In approximately 10 minutes, the storm is going to knock out primary power to this building. Backup generators will engage, but there will be a 40-second window where security systems are vulnerable. That's when I was planning to access the server room and complete my mission. But now, with federal agents throughout the building and you wired and tracked, that plan is compromised. So what are you going to do? I'm going to offer you a choice. Help me get what I came for, and I'll give you evidence that proves who really threatened your daughter. Evidence that will protect you from being used as anyone's scapegoat. Or refuse, and we all lose. The FBI arrests me, sure. But they don't get my network, don't stop the larger operation, and you remain a loose end that someone very powerful will want tied up. Morrison's voice was sharp. Do not agree to help her. We're moving tactical units into position now. Just keep her talking for 2 more minutes. But Evan was thinking about Lily, alone in some federal safe house, trusting that her father would keep her safe. He was thinking about the photograph, about how easily someone had gotten close enough to take it. He was thinking about Vivian's face when she'd promised him the truth, and Zhao's face now as she offered him the same thing. Everyone was using him. Everyone had their own agenda. The question wasn't who was lying. They probably all were, in different ways. The question was whose lies would best protect his daughter. What evidence? He asked. Zhao pulled out a USB drive. Security footage from the day someone photographed your daughter. Footage that shows exactly who took that picture and who they report to. Metadata that proves when and how the photo was taken. Documentation that will demonstrate you were a target, not a conspirator. That could be faked. It could be, but it's not. She held the drive out to him. You want to protect your daughter? This is how you do it. Help me complete my mission, take this evidence, and make sure that whoever actually threatened your child faces consequences. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the building plunged into darkness, emergency lighting taking several seconds to engage. In that darkness, Evan heard movement, felt rather than saw people moving around him. When the emergency lights came on, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow, Zhao was gone. The USB drive sat on the desk where she'd been standing, and the door to the office was slowly closing, suggesting someone had just exited. Morrison's voice exploded in his earpiece. All units, suspect is mobile. Brooks, stay exactly where you are. Do not move. Do not touch anything. But Evan was already moving toward the desk, toward the USB drive that might contain evidence about who'd threatened Lily. His hand closed around it just as the office door burst open and federal agents poured in, weapons raised, shouting commands. Hands up! Drop the device! On the ground now! Evan froze, the USB drive clutched in his fist, surrounded by agents who looked ready to shoot if he so much as twitched wrong. Through it all, Morrison's voice in his ear, furious and frightened at once. Evan, put down the drive and comply with the agents. We'll sort this out, but you need to surrender right now. This has evidence about who threatened my daughter, Evan said, his voice steady despite the weapons pointed at him. I'm not giving it up until someone tells me the truth about what's really happening here. We'll analyze the drive, we'll find out what's on it, but you need to put it down now before someone makes a mistake that gets you killed. Evan looked at the agents, their faces hard with adrenaline and training, their fingers on triggers. He thought about Lily, about trust, about the promise he'd made to her that he'd keep her safe. And he made a decision that was either the smartest or stupidest thing he'd ever done. He closed his eyes, raised his other hand in surrender, and tossed the USB drive gently toward Morrison's voice. Figure out who threatened my daughter. That's all I care about anymore. Not your investigation, not Zhao's mission, not Meridian's secrets. Just who put my little girl in danger. The tension in the room shifted, weapons lowered slightly. Someone moved forward to secure Evan's hands, but gently, not aggressively, and Morrison's voice came through, softer now. We will. I promise you we'll figure it out. They found Zhao 3 floors down, trying to access a maintenance corridor that would have led to the server room. She was arrested without incident, professional to the end, offering no resistance once surrounded by federal agents who clearly knew what they were doing. Her phone and laptop were seized, encrypted devices that would take the FBI's technical teams days or weeks to crack. But the USB drive Evan had grabbed yielded its secrets much faster. Morrison brought him to a secured office an hour later, after the building's power had been restored and the storm had begun to subside. Evan was exhausted, strung out on adrenaline and fear, desperate for news about Lily and for answers about what the drive had contained. Your daughter is safe, Morrison said immediately, understanding what mattered most. She's asking for you. We'll have her brought back within the hour. And the drive? Morrison's expression was complicated. That's where things get interesting. She pulled up images on a laptop, showing the same photograph Evan had received, but with layers of metadata exposed. The photo was taken by a private security contractor working for Meridian, specifically working directly for Marcus, head of corporate security. Evan felt the world tilt again. Marcus threatened my daughter? Not exactly. Marcus was conducting protective surveillance on your daughter, monitoring potential threats. But someone intercepted his surveillance data and used it to create that threatening message. Someone who had access to Meridian's internal security systems and the technical knowledge to make it look like it came from Zhao's operation. Who? Morrison pulled up another file, this one showing personnel records. Dr. Robert Chen, the corporate attorney you met. Turns out he's Sarah Zhao's brother. Real name Robert Zhao. He's been working inside Meridian for 3 years, feeding his sister information while maintaining his cover as legal counsel. He's set up the whole thing, used me to distract from Zhao's real mission, threatened my daughter to pressure me into helping, all while pretending to be on Vivian's side. That's our assessment. He's in custody now, along with Zhao, and we've dismantled their entire network, 17 operatives total, including several others embedded in defense contractors across the country. Evan sat down heavily, trying to process everything. So Vivian was telling the truth. She really was just a target. She was, though I'll note that her past, the incident with her stepfather, the fire, all of that is exactly as she described. We verified it completely during our investigation. Whatever sins she may have committed in building her empire, murder isn't among them. And me? What happens to me now? Morrison closed the laptop. You go home, you hug your daughter, you decide whether you want to go back to work at Meridian or start fresh somewhere else. The FBI thanks you for your cooperation. The charges we threatened you with were never real anyway, and you get to return to your normal life. Just like that. Just like that. Morrison stood, extended her hand. For what it's worth, Mr. Brooks, you did good work tonight. You kept your head, protected your daughter, and helped us stop a significant national security threat. That takes courage most people don't have. Evan shook her hand, feeling disconnected from the praise. He'd done what any father would do. Nothing heroic or special. Just whatever it took to keep his daughter safe. They brought Lily back 45 minutes later, delivered by the same agents who'd taken her away. She ran to Evan the moment she saw him, throwing herself into his arms with enough force to nearly knock him over. Dad, they said we were in danger, but now we're safe, and I got to see a real FBI office, and they had computers everywhere, and I know, sweetheart, I know. It's all over now. Evan held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling her solid and real and safe in his arms. Nothing else mattered. Not Zhao or Robert Chen or corporate espionage or any of it. Just this. Just her. Morrison arranged for them to be driven home in a federal vehicle with assurances that protective surveillance would continue for another few days until they were certain all threats had been neutralized. Evan accepted numbly, too exhausted to argue or question anymore. Back in their apartment, Evan made Lily hot chocolate despite the late hour and sat with her on the couch while she told him about her adventure with the FBI agents. She'd been scared at first, she admitted, but then they'd let her play games on their phones, and one of them had shown her pictures of his dog, and it had been kind of fun, actually. So we're okay now? She asked, her voice small and uncertain. All the scary stuff is over? Yeah, baby, it's over, I promise. She snuggled against his side, her eyes already drooping with exhaustion. Good. I don't like when things are scary. Me neither, Evan said quietly. He carried her to bed 20 minutes later, tucked her in with her stuffed rabbit, and stood in her doorway watching her sleep the way he had so many nights over the past 2 weeks. But this time, the fear was gone. This time, he knew she was genuinely safe. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that made his heart rate spike until he read the message. Mr. Brooks, this is Vivian Cross. I wanted to reach out personally to thank you for everything you did tonight. I understand you have no reason to trust me, and I respect that. But I want you to know that if you need anything, anything at all, you have my personal support. You protected more than just yourself and your daughter tonight. You protected people and technology that keep this country safe. That matters. Evan stared at the message for a long time before responding. I just want to go back to my normal life. My daughter and I, we just want to be ordinary again. Her response came quickly. You were never ordinary, Mr. Brooks, but I understand the desire for peace. Take all the time you need. Your job will be waiting if you want it, or I'll provide references and compensation if you want to start elsewhere. The choice is yours. Another message followed. And Mr. Brooks, the complete truth I promised you. It's in an email I'm sending now. Read it when you're ready. No more secrets, no more carefully curated versions, just the truth. Evan opened his email, found the message from Vivian, but didn't read it. Not yet. Tonight, he just wanted to sit in his apartment with his daughter sleeping safely down the hall and feel the relief of having survived something that could have destroyed them both. The truth could wait until morning. 3 days later, Evan returned to work at Meridian Tower. Marcus met him in the lobby, looking tired and older than Evan remembered. "Mr. Brooks, I owe you an apology. My surveillance of your daughter, even though it was meant to be protective, was used against you. That's on me." "You were trying to help," Evan said. "You weren't the one who turned surveillance into threats." "Still, I should have been more careful." Marcus handed him a new ID badge. "Ms. Cross has arranged for you to be transferred to a different department if you want it. Better pay, better hours, work that doesn't require you to be in the building late or on executive floors. Thought you might prefer something with more separation from everything that happened." Evan took the badge, studied it. Facilities coordinator, assigned to the main mechanical systems management office, regular hours, no weird work orders sending him to restricted areas, no chance of walking through wrong doors. "Thank you," he said. He started the new position the next week, finding it surprisingly satisfying to work with the building systems from a management perspective, rather than just fixing individual problems as they arose. His supervisor was a woman in her 50s who'd worked in facilities her entire career, and who taught him about systems integration with the kind of patience that suggested she genuinely enjoyed mentoring. Evan settled into a routine that felt almost normal. Wake up, make Lily breakfast, drop her at school, work a full day managing systems and coordinating with repair teams, pick her up, help with homework, make dinner, read together before bed. The kind of ordinary existence he'd wanted before everything went sideways. But some things had changed in ways he couldn't quite name. He noticed security in ways he never had before, recognized patterns and vulnerabilities in systems that previously he'd taken for granted. He found himself more confident in meetings, more willing to speak up when he saw problems, less intimidated by people with more authority or education. Walking through that wrong door had changed him, maybe not in obvious ways, but in subtle shifts that made him feel less like someone life happened to, and more like someone who could shape what happened in his life. 2 months after the incident, Vivian Cross sent him a meeting request. Not a demand, not a summons, just a polite question asking if he'd be willing to meet with her for coffee in the building's executive dining area. Evan accepted. She was waiting when he arrived, sitting at a small table near the windows with 2 cups of coffee already prepared. She stood when she saw him, extending her hand with a slight smile. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for agreeing to meet." "Ms. Cross." They shook hands, and Evan sat down across from her, accepting the coffee with a nod of thanks. "I've been meaning to reach out sooner," Vivian said, "but I wanted to give you space to process everything that happened. I know it's been difficult." "We're managing." "Your daughter is well?" "She's great. Back to her normal routine, happy, no lasting trauma from what happened. Kids are resilient." "They are." Vivian sipped her coffee, her expression thoughtful. "Did you read the email I sent you? The complete truth I promised?" "I did." Evan had read it late one night after Lily was asleep, absorbing the details of Vivian's past that she'd kept hidden for so long. The abuse she'd endured, the violence she'd used to escape it, the fire that had freed her but also left her with permanent guilt about not being there when her mother needed protection. It was raw and honest in ways that corporate executives rarely allowed themselves to be. "Thank you for sharing that. I wanted you to know that I understand what it means to protect someone you love from threats you can't entirely control. My mother stayed with a man who hurt her because she thought she was protecting me from worse alternatives. I left that house because I thought getting away would protect both of us. We were both wrong, in different ways. Protection is more complicated than we want it to be." Evan thought about the choices he'd made over the past 2 months, the risks he'd taken, the people he'd trusted and mistrusted. "Yeah, it is. I also wanted to tell you that the security improvements we've implemented because of what happened, they're significant. New protocols, better oversight, multiple layers of authentication for sensitive areas. What happened to you? What almost happened to all of us? It exposed vulnerabilities we didn't know existed." "That's good." "It is. But it's also because of you that we discovered those vulnerabilities before they could be exploited in ways that might have cost lives. Vivian leaned forward slightly. Mr. Brooks, I'm not going to offer you some dramatic promotion or try to buy your loyalty with money. I think we both know that's not what matters to you, but I do want you to know that if you ever need anything, if you or your daughter ever face any kind of threat or difficulty, you have an ally. Not because you owe me anything, but because I owe you. You don't owe me anything. I was just trying to protect my daughter. And in doing so, you protected far more than you realized. That deserves recognition, even if you don't want it. They talked for another 20 minutes, the conversation gradually shifting from the incident to lighter topics. Lily's progress in school, the challenges of single parenting, the small victories that made ordinary life worthwhile. Evan found himself relaxing in a way he wouldn't have expected, seeing Vivian not as an intimidating CEO or a woman with dangerous secrets, but as another person navigating complications and trying to do right by the people who mattered to her. As he prepared to leave, Vivian stood and offered her hand again. Thank you for giving me a chance to apologize properly and to tell you the truth. I know trust is earned, not given, and I hope over time I can earn yours. You already have, Evan said, surprising himself with the honesty. Maybe not complete trust, but enough to believe you're trying to do the right thing in a world that doesn't make that easy. That's all any of us can do. She smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it looked genuinely warm. Take care of yourself and your daughter, Mr. Brooks. And know that there are people here who respect what you did and who will watch out for you. Evan left the meeting feeling oddly settled. He'd been through something extraordinary, survived it, and come out the other side with his daughter safe and his integrity intact. That was what mattered. Not the drama, not the danger, just the fact that when tested, he'd done what needed to be done. That evening, as he helped Lily with her science homework, she looked up at him with that serious expression children get when they're thinking about big questions. Dad, when everything was scary a few months ago, were you afraid? Evan thought about lying, about maintaining the illusion of parental invulnerability, but he'd learned something about honesty through all of this. Yeah, sweetheart, I was really afraid. But you protected me anyway. Always. That's what parents do. We're afraid, but we protect our kids anyway. She seemed satisfied with that answer, returning her attention to her homework. Evan watched her bent over her notebook, carefully drawing diagrams of the water cycle, and felt profound gratitude for the ordinary moment. For the safety of his apartment, the simplicity of homework help, the precious routine of their life together. 6 months after the incident, Evan got a call from Jimmy Torres. Hey man, haven't heard from you in a while. How are you doing? Good, Evan said, and meant it. Really good, actually. Glad to hear it. Listen, I've been following up on some stuff related to that situation you were in. Thought you should know that the FBI closed their investigation. Everyone involved is either in prison or deported. It's completely over. I know. Morrison sent me a letter last month. Yeah? She treating you right? She's been professional, respectful. I think she actually feels bad about how we all got used in this thing. Well, we all got used. That's how these operations work. Jimmy paused. But you came through it okay. You and your daughter. That's what matters. It is, Evan agreed. They talked for a few more minutes, made vague plans to meet up for a beer sometime, then ended the call with the comfortable understanding that sometimes friendship is just knowing someone's there if you need them, even if you don't need them right now. Evan went back to his evening routine, making dinner while Lily did her homework, the television playing quietly in the background. The news was covering some corporate merger, something about technology companies and market shares that would have meant nothing to him 6 months ago, but that now he recognized as involving companies that competed with Meridian. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize, but that felt vaguely familiar. Mr. Brooks, this is Marcus. Wanted to let you know that Ms. Cross has announced her retirement, effective end of the year. She's moving into advisory roles, but stepping back from day-to-day operations. Thought you'd want to know. Evan stared at the message, surprised by the news. Vivian had seemed so committed to her position, so identified with her role, but maybe that was the point. Maybe she'd decided that after 18 years of building walls around herself, it was time to try living differently. He texted back, Thanks for letting me know. I hope she finds what she's looking for. She says the same about you." A year after walking through that wrong door, Evan stood in the parking lot of Lily's school, waiting for her to emerge from her last day of third grade. The summer stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities. He'd saved enough for a real vacation this year, maybe a trip to the beach or the mountains, somewhere they could both relax and forget about the complications life sometimes threw at them. Lily ran out with a group of friends, laughing about something Evan couldn't hear. She waved goodbye to them and bounded over to him, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. "Dad, summer vacation. No more homework for months." "I know. What should we do first?" "Beach. We should definitely go to the beach. Can we? Please?" "We can," Evan said, smiling at her enthusiasm. "I was thinking maybe next week we could drive down to the coast for a few days." Her squeal of delight made everything he'd been through worthwhile. Every moment of fear, every impossible choice, every sleepless night worried about her safety. It had all led to this: his daughter, happy and safe and excited about summer vacation. As they drove home, Lily chattering about all the things she wanted to do at the beach, Evan thought about the man he'd been a year ago. Quiet, content with anonymity, avoiding attention and risk. That man was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned he was capable of facing down foreign spies and federal investigations when his daughter's safety was at stake. But underneath the changes, the core remained the same. He was a father who loved his daughter and would do anything to protect her. That was what mattered. That was what had always mattered. Everything else was just details. They stopped for ice cream on the way home, sitting outside the shop in the late afternoon sun. Lily got chocolate chip, her favorite, and ate it with the single-minded focus children bring to treats they've been looking forward to all day. Evan got vanilla, simple and classic, and watched the street traffic pass by while his daughter enjoyed her ice cream. "Dad?" Lily said between bites. "Yeah, sweetheart?" "I'm glad everything got better. When things were scary, I was worried it would always be scary, but it's not anymore." "No," Evan agreed. "It's not anymore. Because you made it better." "We made it better. Together." She seemed satisfied with that, finishing her ice cream in companionable silence. And Evan sat there in the sunshine, watching his daughter and feeling the profound peace that comes from surviving something difficult and coming out stronger on the other side. The wrong door had changed everything, but in the end, it had led him somewhere he needed to be. Not physically, but internally, to a place where he understood his own strength, recognized his capacity for courage, and knew without question that he could protect the person he loved most in the world. That knowledge was worth all the fear and uncertainty he'd endured to gain it. They finished their ice cream, threw away their trash, and walked back to the truck hand in hand. The summer stretched ahead of them, full of ordinary days and simple pleasures. Beach trips, and late mornings, and the comfortable routine of life without crisis. Evan started the engine, glanced at Lily buckling her seatbelt, and smiled. Sometimes the best endings were the quiet ones, the ones where nothing dramatic happened, where life just returned to normal, and that normalcy felt like victory. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "Ready," Lily said. And they drove into the evening light, leaving the past behind and moving forward into whatever came next, together.